In this video, we're ranking 2 hours of Family Guy episodes from least to most normal. Let's get started. First up, we got Stewie is Enchante, aired on the 8th of March 2015 as the 12th episode of Family Guy's 13th season. The episode was written by Gary Janetti and directed by Steve Robertson, with Pablo Solis serving as assistant director. The storyboarders were Anna Marie Brown, Helen Kim, and Dave Sherburne, and it marked the 243rd overall episode of the series. Approximately 3.98 million viewers watched the episode during its original broadcast on Fox. The episode centers on Stewie Griffin becoming pregnant with hybrid babies created from his own DNA combined with DNA from Brian Griffin, the family's talking dog. This bizarre premise pushed the boundaries of what had been shown on network television in an animated comedy, creating significant controversy among viewers and critics. The title likely references a famous 1952 episode of the classic sitcom I Love Lucy titled Lucy is Enchante, where the word enchante was used because 1950 seconds broadcast standards prohibited saying pregnant on television. The episode opens with Stewie noticing that Brian has been acting distant and uninterested in spending time with him. Stewie makes multiple attempts to hang out with Brian and engage him in activities, but Brian consistently brushes him off. Brian stays distracted by his phone and shows little interest in maintaining their usual close companionship. This rejection deeply bothers Stewie, who has come to depend on Brian as his primary friend and partner in the Griffin household. Stewie's anxiety about their drifting friendship increases when he observes the Swanson family. He watches Joe and Bonnie Swanson, the neighbors who live next door, spending time together with their baby daughter Susie. Seeing this family unit gives Stewie what he believes is the perfect solution to his problem with Brian. In Stewie's mind, the way to strengthen a relationship and ensure someone cannot leave your life is to have a baby with them. This twisted logic makes sense to the emotionally immature infant who does not understand the serious implications of what he plans to do. Using his genius intellect and access to advanced technology, Stewie constructs a specialized machine in his bedroom. This device is designed to extract DNA from Brian and combine it with Stewie's own genetic material. Stewie secretly collects a sample of Brian's DNA without his knowledge or permission. He loads this sample into his invention. While his teddy bear Rupert watches, Stewie activates the machine. The device injects the mixed genetic material into Stewie's body through his belly button. The next morning brings a shocking discovery. Stewie approaches Brian to share major news. Brian smells something unusual and asks what it is. Stewie responds, "Yes, you do, Brian," and shows Brian a pregnancy test. The test displays 2 lines, indicating a positive result. Brian reacts with immediate confusion and alarm, asking, "Oh my God, that thing's positive. Is Lois pregnant again?" Stewie says, "No." Brian then asks, "Meg is pregnant?" Stewie tells him, "You're getting warmer," before clearing his throat. Brian asks, "What have you done?" Stewie corrects him by saying, "I think you mean, what have we done?" He then makes his announcement, "Brian, we're pregnant." Brian responds, "Oh my God," as the reality of the situation sinks in. Stewie immediately starts worrying about the future, exclaiming, "And in 18 years, he's going to move away." Brian tries to convince Stewie that the pregnancy is a terrible idea. He pressures Stewie to terminate it, arguing about the unnatural situation they have created. However, Stewie refuses to listen to Brian's concerns and objections. When Brian makes attempts to physically induce a miscarriage, Stewie becomes extremely defensive and angry. He shouts at Brian, "You hit me. What kind of monster hits a pregnant toddler?" This confrontation shows Stewie treating the pregnancy as sacrosanct despite the bizarre circumstances of its creation. Meanwhile, a separate storyline develops with Peter Griffin and his 3 friends. Peter, Joe Swanson, Cleveland Brown, and Glenn Quagmire are hanging out together when they see a viral video featured on the news. This inspires them to create their own viral internet video. Peter asks the group, "Now, what are the ingredients to a viral internet video?" Joe immediately responds with a single word, "Cats." This exchange references the well-known internet phenomenon of cat videos achieving massive popularity online. As Stewie's pregnancy progresses, he begins experiencing the typical symptoms associated with pregnancy. His stomach expands visibly, creating a pronounced baby bump that grows larger over a short period of time. He develops intense and specific food cravings. At one point, Stewie tells Brian, "I have such a craving for burgers. It's like my body is just craving red meat." and mint chip ice cream and only mint chip. Any other ice creams makes me want to puke. Is that weird? Brian responds with sarcasm. Yes, Stewie. That's the one weird thing in all this. This exchange highlights the absurdity of treating any aspect of an infant's pregnancy as if it were normal. Stewie forces Brian to participate fully in every step of the pregnancy experience. They attend a prenatal appointment with Dr. Hartman, the incompetent physician who regularly appears throughout the series. During the medical examination, Stewie asks the doctor, "Could you do that thing where you take some fluid and tell me if it's going to be an imbecile or a cretin?" Doctor. Hartman responds casually, "Oh, not to worry. There are places where those people can be warehoused, but from strictly eyeballing you, I'd say everything looks fine." The doctor performs his examination without showing any recognition that his patient is a 1-year-old male infant who should not be capable of pregnancy. Brian, sitting in the examination room and clearly contemplating dark thoughts, asks, "Are there a lot of stairs in this building?" The pregnancy activities continue with Stewie and Brian going clothes shopping for maternity wear. They also schedule and attend a professional photography session to document the pregnancy with posed pictures. During one of their shopping trips, they encounter another pregnant woman. Stewie engages her in conversation, asking how far along she is in her pregnancy. After some discussion, Stewie makes cruel comments about her age and the health of her baby. Brian has to apologize to the woman and quickly pull Stewie away from the confrontation. At some point during this period, Cleveland Brown visits or sees Peter. Cleveland asks him, "Hey, I went by your house the other day. Is your baby pregnant?" Peter responds with his typical lack of awareness or concern. "I don't know. Lois is in charge of the kids." This brief exchange demonstrates how the other characters remain largely oblivious to the bizarre situation happening in the Griffin household. Peter and his friends continue working on their viral video project. Peter brings up a video he remembers seeing, mentioning something about a monkey and a frog at the zoo. Joe responds by asking, "That frog?" He points to a scene showing a female frog wearing a miniskirt and a blonde wig. The frog puts a quarter into a jukebox and begins dancing seductively. A group of male monkeys watches her performance, gradually moving closer. Peter takes out his phone to film the scene, saying, "Bingo." Joe watches with concern and comments, "I'm concerned that frog's in more danger than she realizes." This scene parodies viral video culture while also referencing the film, The Accused. Joe Swanson makes his own attempt at creating viral content. He records himself saying, "Hi, I'm Joe Swanmeyer, and this is 30 impressions in 30 seconds. He then proceeds to perform a rapid series of impressions and movie quotes, though they come across as monotonous and unimpressive. At one point in the episode, Quagmire reads something on a computer screen and comments, "Geez, that word looks a lot harsher when it's in all caps." The pregnancy reaches its climax when Stewie's water breaks while he and Brian are eating at McBurgertown, a fast food restaurant. Stewie realizes the baby is coming and panics. Brian rushes Stewie out to his car and begins driving as fast as he can toward the hospital. However, they do not make it in time. While still in the car, Stewie goes into active labor. Brian is forced to pull the car over and deliver the baby himself in the vehicle. Stewie does not know where the baby will emerge from, which adds to the chaos and confusion of the situation. As the birth begins, babies start coming out of multiple parts of Stewie's body. At least one baby emerges from his mouth. The interior of Brian's car becomes covered in blood and birthing fluids. During this traumatic delivery, Stewie shouts instructions to Brian. "Brian, save the placenta. Save it, I want to eat it." This references the real practice of placentophagy, where some people consume the placenta after giving birth. During this moment, Mayor Adam West happens to walk past the parked car. He looks through the window and observes what is happening inside. He watches the birth for a moment before saying, "Mazel tov," and then walking away as if this were a completely normal occurrence. Brian discovers that Stewie has not given birth to just one baby. Instead, Stewie has delivered an entire litter of multiple hybrid babies. Each infant is a disturbing combination of human and canine features, mixing Stewie's characteristics with Brian's dog traits. The babies have abnormal appearances, with various physical problems visible from birth. After the delivery, Stewie and Brian face the challenge of raising these hybrid babies. The babies are given names including Jack, Rose, Finn, and Mary Beth. Stewie encourages Brian to view this situation as a second chance at parenthood. This statement references earlier episodes where Brian had a biological son named Dylan, whom he had abandoned and later failed to successfully reconnect with. Stewie and Brian take the babies to a public park to spend time outdoors. During this outing, the full extent of the babies' medical problems becomes apparent. The babies have significant birth defects and health issues. One baby is deaf and cannot hear sounds around it. Other babies display severe physical deformities or developmental disabilities. As Stewie and Brian watch their offspring and interact with them, they begin calculating the enormous costs that will be required to provide medical care for children with such extensive special needs. The babies suffer accidents and tragedies that reduce their numbers. The stress of attempting to care for these babies takes a severe toll on both Stewie and Brian. The infants cry constantly and require round-the-clock attention and care. Instead of bringing Stewie and Brian closer together as Stewie had hoped, the babies actually drive them further apart. They argue frequently and snap at each other over minor issues. Their bad moods feed off one another, creating a cycle of negativity and resentment. During one particularly intense argument, Stewie and Brian finally have an honest conversation about their true feelings. Brian admits that he had been pulling away from Stewie before the pregnancy happened, but not because he valued their friendship any less. He explains that he had simply been dealing with personal issues and needed some space. Stewie confesses that he created the pregnancy out of desperation and fear of losing Brian's companionship. Both characters realize that the entire catastrophic situation could have been completely avoided if they had just communicated openly about their feelings, instead of Stewie resorting to such an extreme measure. This honest conversation leads to a mutual decision. Stewie and Brian agree that they cannot handle the responsibility of raising these hybrid babies. They gather up the surviving babies and load them into Brian's car. They drive to an animal shelter, the type of facility where unwanted pets are typically surrendered. Stewie and Brian walk into the shelter carrying the babies and hand them over to the staff workers, abandoning their biological offspring. The episode concludes with Stewie and Brian returning to their normal daily lives. They act as if the pregnancy and births never happened. Their friendship has been restored now that they have eliminated the source of stress between them. In passing, Stewie mentions that he had organized a baby shower at some point during the pregnancy, which Brian apparently never knew about. Peter's viral video subplot reaches its conclusion separately from the main story. After numerous failed attempts to deliberately create viral content, Peter and his friends eventually give up on their efforts. In an ironic twist, Chris Griffin accidentally becomes an internet sensation without trying. Someone records Chris on their phone camera as he drops his chocolate bar while crossing a street. Instead of leaving it behind, Chris walks back into traffic to retrieve the dropped chocolate and eats it despite it being dirty. This mundane and foolish act gets recorded and uploaded online, where it receives millions of views and becomes genuinely viral. Peter's carefully planned attempts to manufacture viral content all failed completely, while Chris achieved viral fame through completely unplanned, spontaneous behavior. The episode featured the regular Family Guy voice cast. Seth MacFarlane provided voices for Peter Griffin, Stewie Griffin, Brian Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire. Alex Borstein voiced Lois Griffin. Seth Green voiced Chris Griffin. Mila Kunis voiced Meg Griffin. Mike Henry voiced Cleveland Brown. Patrick Warburton voiced Joe Swanson. Additional characters appearing in the episode included Bonnie Swanson, Susie Swanson, Rupert the Teddy Bear, Tom Tucker, Dr. Hartman, and Mayor Adam West. The episode generated extremely divided reactions from viewers. Some audience members praised it as bold and daring, arguing that it represented Family Guy willing to push boundaries and create genuinely shocking content. These viewers appreciated the show's refusal to play it safe or worry about offending people. Other viewers found the episode deeply disturbing, uncomfortable, and unnecessarily graphic. Many people described feeling nauseated or upset while watching. The imagery of Stewie's pregnant body, the graphic birth scene with babies emerging from multiple body parts, and the overall concept of infant pregnancy crossed lines for many audience members. Some longtime fans stated this episode was their breaking point with the series. The episode explored themes of friendship, communication, desperation, responsibility, and consequences. Stewie's fear of losing Brian drives him to take extreme action rather than simply discussing his feelings openly. Brian's distance from Stewie stems from his own personal struggles rather than any diminishing affection for his friend. Their failure to communicate honestly with each other creates the entire crisis. The decision to abandon the babies at an animal shelter represents both characters choosing their own comfort over taking responsibility for their actions. The show presents this as characteristic selfishness from these two characters rather than admirable behavior. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Rhode Island. This episode is the first in the famous Rhode 2 series that became a regular feature of the show. These special episodes always focus on Brian and Stewie going on adventures together without the rest of the Griffin family. The episode shows Brian and Stewie traveling across the country trying to get back home to Rhode Island after a trip goes wrong. The episode starts with Peter and Lois at home. Peter has been buying expensive tapes about relationships. He tells Lois he got another tape to help their marriage. Lois grabs the tape and sees the price tag. She says, $49.95? That's 3 times as much as the first one. Peter tries to explain that their relationship is more important than money. He gets confused with his words and says, Lois, our relationship cannot be measured in nipples and dimes. I mean, nickels and boobs. He pauses and then just says, money, before running away, saying, I'll be upstairs. Peter also makes a deal with Lois about watching one of the tapes. He says, okay, Lois, I'll make you a deal. We'll watch the tape, but you gotta do something for me. Lois asks what he wants. Peter requests, do that Katharine Hepburn impression for me, and Philadelphia Story Hepburn. None of that head on a slinky golden pond stuff. This shows Peter wants Lois to do an impression of the actress from when she was younger, not from her older movies. At some point in the episode, Peter makes a comment to Lois saying, usually beautiful women don't turn back into you until after I'm finished. This rude joke suggests Peter was thinking about or looking at another woman. Later, Peter gets caught in a situation and tells Lois, Lois, this is not what it looks like. She means nothing to me. Peter is trying to explain away something that looks bad. At the end of one scene, Lois tells Peter, oh, Peter, I love you. Peter completely misunderstands and responds, about 5:15. He thinks she asked him what time it is instead of saying she loves him. This shows how Peter often does not pay attention or understand what Lois is saying to him. Chris and Meg have a small part in the episode. They play a guessing game together. Chris says, okay, Meg, I'm thinking of another word. This time it's definitely not kitty. Can you guess what it is? Meg guesses. Is it kitty? Chris gets very upset and yells, arg, get out of my head. Get out of my head. This shows Chris getting frustrated because Meg keeps guessing the same word even though he told her it was not that word. The main story follows Brian and Stewie who are traveling far from home. They end up staying at a motel for the night. While they sleep in the motel room, Brian licks Stewie's head. Stewie is dreaming and says out loud, oh, that's it, Mr. Giraffe, get all the marmalade. He is having a dream about a giraffe and marmalade while Brian licks him in his sleep. During the night at the motel, there are people in another room doing something illegal. 2 men can be heard talking through the wall. One man says, you got the stuff? The other responds, yeah, I got it. Where's the money, huh? I want to see the money. The first man says, no, no, no. You don't see the money till I see the stuff. Stewie gets annoyed by all the noise. He decides to end the problem by shouting, he's wearing a wire. This makes the criminals think one of them is working with the police. One man yells, what? You son of a... And the deal falls apart. The next morning, the phone rings in the motel room. Stewie wakes up and walks over to answer it. He mistakes the heat radiator for the phone and touches it. He says, hello? And immediately burns his hand. He screams, ah, 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 oh, damn it, to pus spewing, blood-gutted, hell. This shows Stewie using very strong curse words for a baby. He then goes to the actual ringing phone and picks it up saying, what? The person on the phone tells them their credit card was declined. This means they have no way to pay for the motel room. Stewie says, what do you mean our credit card was declined? Oh no, there's no need to come up. Wheel, oh blast. He trips over something while talking on the phone and yells, damn it. He climbs onto the bed and tries to wake up Brian by pulling his collar. He says, oh, come on, you, get up, come on. Go for a ride in the car? He tries using the promise of a car ride to wake Brian up, the same way people wake up dogs. While trying to pull the blanket off Brian, Stewie slides under the bed instead. He yells, blast. But then he finds something under there and says, ooh, a penny. Even though they are in trouble, Stewie gets distracted by finding money on the floor. The motel manager comes to their door demanding payment. He yells through the door, motel manager, open up or I'll hit you with this blunt instrument I use to hit deadbeats with bad credit cards. He then corrects himself saying, well, it's not an instrument, it's more of an object, but it's blunt, hard and blunt, and, well, It's kind of like a bat. I found it out back one day when I was raking. The manager is threatening them with a bat he found, but he gets confused trying to describe it properly. Brian realizes they need to escape quickly. He says, "Oh crap, we gotta disappear, and quick." A truck drives past them on the street, and they both vanish. But then they reappear further down the street, still on the sidewalk. Brian says, "Maybe we should have jumped on that truck." They failed to actually escape by getting on the truck that passed by. At some point during their travels, a man sees Stewie and asks, "Aren't you a little young to be traveling alone?" Stewie responds with an insult, "Aren't you a little old to be wearing braces?" This shows Stewie being rude to an adult who questioned why a baby is traveling by himself. Stewie tries to use a phone to call home. He picks up the phone and says, "Hello? Operator? Hello? Oh God, that's right. You have to punch in the numbers nowadays. I should know this." He tries to remember phone numbers. He says, "Oh yes, 867 to 5309. That's it. This is the phone number from a famous 1982 song by Tommy Tutone." Stewie realizes this is wrong and says, "No, wait, that's not it. Damn you, Tommy Tutone." Since he cannot remember the real number, he decides to just try every possible number. He says, "Only one thing to do. 111 to 1000, 111. Lois? Damn. 111 to 1000, 112. Lois? Damn. 111 to 1000, 113. He plans to call every number until he reaches Lois. During their trip, Brian is drunk. Stewie sees him and says, "Oh, here's a pleasant sight. Cirrhosis, the wonder dog." Cirrhosis is a disease you get from drinking too much alcohol. Stewie is making fun of Brian for being an alcoholic. At another point, Stewie asks Brian, "Oh God, you're not coming out of the closet, are you? Why does everyone always come out to me?" This suggests Stewie thinks Brian wants to tell him something personal. Brian denies being drunk. He says, "I'm not drunk, I have a speech impediment." Then he immediately throws up and says, "And a stomach virus." He falls off a stool and adds, "and an inner ear infection." Brian is clearly drunk but makes up excuses for his behavior. The throwing up and falling prove he is lying about being sober. Brian mentions he needs time to think about things. He says, "I just need some time to think, alright?" Stewie responds sarcastically, Yes, you've got lots to think about, haven't you? Public drunkenness, grand theft auto." This reveals that Brian has been drunk in public, and they stole a car during this trip. Brian adds, "You left out the part where I made you smash your head on the windshield." This means Brian drove recklessly and caused Stewie to hit his head. Stewie says, "Well, I don't recall." Brian then slams on the brakes hard, making Stewie fly forward and smash his head into the windshield again. Stewie admits, "Yes, well, I suppose I walked right into that one." He literally walked into the windshield, but also walked into Brian's trap by denying it happened the first time. While they walk somewhere, Stewie complains, "I say, walk slower, dog. My Huggies are already holed up in Box Canyon. Huggies are diapers." Stewie is saying his diaper is uncomfortable because they are walking too fast. Box Canyon is a place name, but here it means his diaper is bunched up in his bottom area. At one point, Stewie looks at the night sky and says, "I read that starlight gives you cancer, but then again, what doesn't these days?" This shows Stewie being cynical about health warnings. He suggests that everything supposedly causes cancer, according to news reports. Brian thanks Stewie for helping him with something. He says, "Thanks for not ratting me out. Is there anything I can do to pay you back?" Stewie has a specific request ready. He says, "Oh yes. You remember that episode of The Brady Bunch where Bobby saved Greg's life and Greg became his slave?" Brian confirms he remembers it. Stewie continues, "It's on this afternoon. You can tape it for me and put a nice label on it." This is Stewie's way of saying Brian now owes him a favor, just like in the TV show episode where one brother became indebted to another. The episode also includes cutaway gags and other scenes. One cutaway shows two men having an argument. One man yells, "I don't trust you. You put your seed in my daughter's belly. You're fired." The other man protests, "But Pa, you can't fire me." The first man responds, "You're lucky you're my brother too, or I'd kill you." This bizarre scene shows a father who is also a boss firing his son who is also his brother for getting his daughter pregnant. The family relationships are confusing and inappropriate. Brian makes a comment to someone saying, "You could be in magazines." You could, and not just Jugs or Creamsicle. These are names of adult magazines. Brian is saying the person is attractive enough to be in mainstream magazines, not just inappropriate ones. Peter makes another comment about relationship tapes earlier in the episode. He complains, "Geez, can we not talk about curtains for 2 seconds? I got another one of those relationship tapes." Lois takes the tape from him before he finishes talking. This shows Peter getting frustrated with domestic conversations and trying to change the subject to his tapes. The episode shows Brian struggling with alcoholism and making bad choices while drunk. He gets drunk, steals a car, and drives dangerously with Stewie in the vehicle. This creates a serious situation where an infant is put in danger by an adult's irresponsible behavior. The episode treats Brian's alcoholism as both a character flaw and a source of comedy. Stewie shows his intelligence and ability to handle difficult situations. Even though he is a baby, he navigates staying at a motel, deals with criminals in the next room, tries to use phones, and helps them escape when they cannot pay their bill. He acts more mature and capable than Brian in many ways, even though Brian is the adult and Stewie is an infant. The episode explores the unusual relationship between Brian and Stewie. They function as partners or friends rather than as a pet dog and a baby. They argue, make deals, and depend on each other to get through problems. Brian treats Stewie as an equal rather than as a child who needs protection. This episode is considered one of the least normal because it features a talking dog and a genius baby traveling across America together, committing crimes, and getting into adult situations. The premise requires accepting that a dog can drive a car, get drunk at bars, and have conversations with a 1-year-old infant who speaks in full sentences with a British accent. The whole situation is bizarre and impossible in reality. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Lethal Weapons. Lethal Weapons aired on the 8th of November 2001 during Family Guy's 3rd season. The episode was written by Chris Sheridan and directed by Michael Dante DiMartino. This episode is unusual because it shows Lois Griffin learning martial arts and using those skills to violently beat up people who come to Rhode Island from New York. The title references the Lethal Weapon movie series starring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover about police officers who fight criminals. The episode includes a scene at church with Father Sapienza giving a sermon. He speaks in a very casual and rough way, not like a traditional priest. He says, "Yo, God is good, eh? And he expects us to be good. And if you're not, he's gonna come down and bust your freaking skull. Amen." This priest talks like a tough guy from the streets instead of using formal religious language. He threatens that God will hurt people who are not good. Peter Griffin attends this church service. After leaving church, Peter encounters someone on the street who insults his favorite football team. The person yells, "Patriots suck." This makes Peter very angry. He gasps and says, "Blasphemy." Peter then throws what he claims is holy water at the person. The liquid hits them, and they scream, "Ar, ag, it burns, ajik." The show then cuts away to explain what really happened. The scene shows a science lab where a scientist picks up a bottle. He looks at it and says, "Holy water, where's that acid that I ordered?" This reveals that Peter accidentally threw acid on the person instead of holy water. Someone mixed up the bottles at the lab. The person was burning because they got hit with acid, not because holy water hurt them. Peter goes to a bar called the Drunken Clam where he likes to hang out. He tells the bartender, Horace, "Hey Horace, put the Pats game on the TV and get me a few beers, eh?" Horace responds with bad news. He says, "Sorry Peter, someone stole the remotes. And the kegs, and I'm not sure but I think I've been shot." Horace then looks down at his stomach and sees a bullet wound. He confirms, yep, someone robbed the bar, stole the TV remotes and beer kegs, and shot Horace in the stomach. Horace acts very casual about being shot, which is strange and funny. The main story involves Lois taking martial arts lessons. Her neighbor, Bonnie Swanson, is teaching her. During one lesson, Bonnie tells Lois, "Wow, you're doing great for your first lesson." Lois is excited about learning to fight. She says, "I'm really cutting loose, just like Julie Andrews in that movie where she showed her breasts." Lois is comparing herself to the famous actress Julie Andrews, but makes up a movie that does not exist. This leads to a cutaway scene that parodies the movie Mary Poppins. The scene shows the children Jane and Michael Banks talking to Mary Poppins. Michael says, "Oh Mary, you'll never leave us, will you?" Instead of answering the question, Mary Poppins unbuttons her shirt and exposes her chest to the children. Michael responds, "Yes, those are lovely, but it doesn't quite answer our question." This inappropriate joke imagines the wholesome character, Mary Poppins, doing something completely out of character from the family-friendly movie. The episode deals with people from New York coming to Rhode Island. These visitors are called leafers because they come to look at the colorful autumn leaves. Peter and other Rhode Island residents do not like these tourists. Peter insults various New York sports teams. He says, Jets suck, Yankees suck, Knicks sucks, Krypton sucks. He names 3 real New York teams, the Jets football team, Yankees baseball team, and Knicks basketball team, and then adds Krypton, which is the fictional planet from Superman comics. Brian joins in by yelling, "Leaf ears," to show his anger at the New York visitors. Lois starts using her new martial arts skills to fight the New York visitors. Peter acts as an announcer for Lois's fighting. He says, "Come one, come all." She soars like a butterfly and stings like "when I pee." This is a twisted version of Muhammad Ali's famous quote, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." Peter changes it to reference pain when urinating, which is crude and inappropriate. Stewie gets into an argument with someone during the episode. He uses old-fashioned insults, calling them, "Why you tottering femme-sucked dewberry? I'm going to find something to strike you with. Excuse me." Stewie speaks in a fancy British way even when threatening violence. A dewberry is a type of berry, so calling someone that name is an unusual insult. After threatening to hit the person, Stewie politely says, "Excuse me," as he leaves to find a weapon. Quagmire, the Griffin family's neighbor, watches Lois beat up the New York visitors from his window. He stands at his window completely naked while watching. He says, "Oh, that was strangely arousing." Watching Lois fight people turns him on sexually. Suddenly, the window slams shut on him, causing pain. He yells, "Ow," and then makes a phone call. He dials 911 emergency services and says, "Hello, 911? It's Quagmire." Yeah, it's in the window this time." This suggests Quagmire has called 911 multiple times before about his private parts getting stuck or hurt in various places. The emergency operators know him by name. This time, his private parts got caught in the window. Peter makes a comment criticizing television networks during the episode. He says, "And shame on the network that puts this junk on the air." He is talking about Fox, the network that actually shows Family Guy. Lois warns him, Peter, maybe you shouldn't say anything bad about the network." She worries about consequences. Peter does not care. He asks, "Why? What are they gonna do? Cut our budget?" He then says, "I'm gonna go get a beer," and walks away. This breaks the fourth wall by having characters acknowledge they are on a TV show and talking about their own network. Peter makes another comment about family fighting. He tells Lois, brothers and sisters fighting is as natural as a white man's dialogue in a Spike Lee movie." Spike Lee is a famous movie director known for making films about black experiences in America. Peter suggests that white characters in Spike Lee movies do not talk naturally. This leads to a cutaway showing Peter's idea of white dialogue in a Spike Lee movie. A black actor says normally, "What's up? Can I get 2 slices of pepperoni?" He is just ordering pizza. Then a white actor appears and instead of speaking like a normal person, he makes a growling sound, "Row, www." This exaggerates the idea that white characters in Spike Lee films are written poorly and do not seem like real people. Quagmire has another scene where he encounters someone he believes is a transgender woman. He shouts, "Whoa, transvestite, back off." He uses an outdated and offensive term. Then he immediately asks, "Wait a sec, pre-op or post-op?" He wants to know if the person has had gender confirmation surgery or not. This shows Quagmire being both shocked and inappropriately curious about someone's private medical information. The episode shows Lois becoming increasingly violent as she practices her martial arts skills. She starts beating up the New York tourists who come to Rhode Island. The visitors from New York insult local things, which angers the Rhode Island residents. The tourists do not show respect for the local area or people. This gives Lois a reason to use her fighting skills on them. Peter supports Lois fighting the visitors. He acts proud of her violence instead of concerned. He announces her fights like she is a professional fighter. The whole family seems to think Lois beating people up is acceptable as long as they are rude visitors from New York. The episode makes fun of regional rivalries between different parts of the northeastern United States. People from Rhode Island and people from New York do not like each other. The Rhode Island characters see New York visitors as invaders who come to look at leaves and cause problems. The New York visitors insult Rhode Island sports teams and act superior to the locals. This conflict escalates to actual physical violence. Horace being shot and not caring very much is another strange element. Bar robberies are serious crimes, and being shot requires immediate medical attention. But Horace just stands there talking to Peter about not being able to change the channel or serve beer. He treats his gunshot wound like a minor inconvenience. This absurd reaction makes the violence seem less serious than it really is. The Mary Poppins parody is particularly inappropriate because the original movie is a beloved children's film. The character Mary Poppins is an iconic, wholesome nanny figure. The joke imagines her exposing herself to the children she cares for. This takes an innocent moment from the movie and turns it into something disturbing. The children's calm reaction makes it even more bizarre, as they politely comment on what happened without being upset. Father Sapienza, talking like a gangster instead of a traditional priest, shows religious figures in an unusual way. Catholic priests normally speak formally and use specific religious language. This priest threatens violence and uses casual street language. He tells people God will bust your freaking skull if they are bad. This mixes religion with physical threats in a comedic way. Peter throwing acid on someone who insults the Patriots is extreme violence presented as comedy. Sports fans can be very passionate about their teams, but attacking someone with acid for insulting a football team is psychotic behavior. The show treats it like a funny misunderstanding rather than a serious crime. The person who got acid thrown on them probably suffered severe chemical burns and permanent scarring. Stewie threatening to find a weapon to hit someone shows the violent baby character being true to form. Even though Stewie is an infant, he regularly threatens and sometimes commits violence against others. His fancy vocabulary and British accent make his threats sound less scary, but he genuinely intends to hurt people. Stewie combines baby appearance with adult aggression and intelligence. The episode portrays Lois transforming from a housewife into a violent fighter. Usually, Lois is the voice of reason in the Griffin family. She tries to keep Peter and the kids under control, but learning martial arts changes her behavior. She starts attacking people in public. The episode title, Lethal Weapons, refers to Lois herself becoming a dangerous weapon through her training. Quagmire calling 911 about his private parts suggests this is a regular problem for him. The emergency operators recognize his voice and know what he means when he says, "It's in the window this time." The phrase "this time" means his private parts have been stuck in other places before. This paints Quagmire as someone who frequently has embarrassing accidents that require emergency services. He engages in risky behavior that leads to injuries. Peter breaking the fourth wall by criticizing Fox shows the series being self-aware. Family Guy sometimes makes jokes about being a TV show. Characters acknowledge they are on television and reference the network, ratings, and budget. Peter sarcastically asking if the network will cut their budget makes fun of how TV shows have to be careful not to offend the companies that air them. The episode uses violence for comedy throughout. People get hurt in various ways, including being shot, having acid thrown on them, getting beaten up by Lois, and Quagmire injuring himself. All of this violence is treated as funny rather than serious. Nobody faces real consequences for hurting others. Horace does not go to the hospital for his gunshot wound. Peter does not get arrested for assault with acid. Lois does not face charges for attacking tourists. The regional conflict between Rhode Island and New York drives much of the episode's plot. Rhode Island is a small state that often gets overlooked or disrespected by people from bigger states. New York is a large state with a big city that many people see as more important. When New Yorkers come to Rhode Island, the locals feel invaded and disrespected. The tourists do not appreciate Rhode Island culture or show respect for the local area. The leafers come specifically to look at fall foliage, which means colorful autumn leaves. New England states like Rhode Island are famous for beautiful fall colors when leaves change from green to red, orange, and yellow. This attracts tourists every autumn. Local residents sometimes resent these seasonal visitors who crowd their towns, create traffic, and then leave without contributing much to the local economy. Peter's extreme love for the New England Patriots football team shows sports fandom taken to an absurd level. Many people care deeply about their local sports teams and get upset when others insult them. But Peter's reaction goes far beyond normal fan behavior. Calling an insult blasphemy treats the football team like a religious figure. Throwing acid on someone for insulting a sports team is attempted murder. The show exaggerates real fan behavior to create dark comedy. Bonnie teaching Lois martial arts shows women learning self-defense skills. Many women take martial arts classes to feel more confident and be able to protect themselves. The episode takes this reasonable idea and pushes it to extremes. Instead of using martial arts only for self-defense, Lois starts attacking people who have not threatened her. She uses her new skills aggressively rather than defensively. The Julie Andrews reference shows how Family Guy uses real celebrities in jokes. Julie Andrews is famous for wholesome family movies like Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. She has never appeared in any movie showing her breasts. Lois, making up a fake movie where this happens, is absurd. The show then creates a scene imagining this fake movie, making the wholesome Mary Poppins character do something completely inappropriate. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Courtship of Stewie's Father, aired on the 20th of November 2005 during Family Guy's 4th season. The episode was written by Cherry Shevapravat Doomrong and directed by Glenn Hill. This episode is unusual because it shows Peter Griffin and his infant son Stewie becoming close friends after years of Stewie hating Peter. The episode takes them on a trip to Disney World in Florida, where they bond through inappropriate activities. The episode begins with Lois talking to Peter about their son. She says, "Peter, we need to talk about your son." Peter responds by asking, "The fat one or the funny-looking one?" He is asking if Lois means Chris or Stewie. Chris hears this and laughs. "Ha, ha, Dad called you fat." Then he realizes what Peter said and stops laughing. Wait, Chris understands that Peter called him fat and Stewie funny-looking. Both sons got insulted by their father. Peter and Stewie travel together on a plane to Florida. Stewie complains about the trip during the flight. He says, "We just sat on a plane for 3 hours to come to Florida, God's waiting room, for who knows what." Stewie calls Florida God's waiting room because many elderly people retire there and go there to live their final years. Stewie is angry about going to Florida without knowing why. Then Stewie sees a sign that reads, "Disney World 5 miles. His attitude changes completely. He gets very excited and shouts, "Oh, Disney World, Disney World, Disney World, I want to go to Disney World, Disney World, Dissa, ah, ah, ah." He becomes like a normal, excited child who wants to go to the theme park, but then he remembers he was angry. He relaxes and says calmly, "I'm still mad at you." Even though he wants to go to Disney World, he tries to stay mad at Peter. The episode includes news segments with Tom Tucker and Ollie Williams. Tom says, "We now go live to Ollie Williams in the Channel 5 newscopter." "What's the scene, Ollie?" Ollie Williams is in a helicopter looking down at the ground. He reports, "Everybody looks like ants." Tom Tucker explains, "Probably 'cause you're up so high." Ollie's news report is useless because he just states the obvious fact that people look small when you are high up. Tom then says, "Coming up, an exclusive interview with Andrew Shue." This suggests they will interview the actor Andrew Shue. There is a scene involving someone called Eisner. This character chants, "Kali Ma, Kali Ma, Kali Ma." This is a reference to the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where the villain chants this phrase. Peter responds, "You betrayed the shareholders." This suggests Peter is accusing someone of betraying people who own company stock. At some point, Stewie wears a Dutch costume and gets chained up by a security guard. The security guard says, "Now sing." Stewie refuses by saying, "I shall do no such thing." Another prisoner who is a Dutch boy tells Stewie, "You must sing. If you don't, they'll make you do a Christmas movie with Tim Allen." This is a threat about being forced to appear in a Christmas movie. Stewie gives in to the threat and sings, "It's a tiny, tiny word. It's a tiny, tiny world." This is a version of the song from the Disney theme park ride. Peter and Stewie's relationship has problems during the episode. Peter talks to Brian about this. He says, "Aw, things were going so good for me and Stewie, but now he hates me again. Brian, what should I do to win him back?" Brian responds, "That depends. Do you want my advice, or are you just asking random questions again?" Brian suggests that Peter sometimes asks questions without actually wanting answers. Peter then proves Brian right by asking, "What's a hypotenuse?" This is a random math question about triangles. Peter changes the subject completely instead of listening to Brian's advice. Lois discovers that Peter took Stewie somewhere inappropriate. She asks Peter, "Peter, did you take Stewie to a strip club? He smells like sweat and fear." Peter brought his infant son to a strip club where women dance for money. Lois can tell where they went because of how Stewie smells. The smell of sweat and fear comes from the strip club. Stewie confirms they went to a strip club with his response. He says, "Ugh, let me tell you, Tuesday afternoon is not exactly their A squad. I actually saw bullet wounds." Stewie complains about the quality of the dancers who work on Tuesday afternoons. He calls them not the A squad, meaning they are not the best dancers. Stewie also saw that some dancers had bullet wounds on their bodies. This means the dancers have been shot before. This is a very dark thing for a baby to see. When Peter and Stewie return home, Peter greets Lois by saying, "Hey Drippy, you're back. What's for dinner?" Peter calls his wife Drippy, which is not a nice nickname. He also immediately asks what she is making for dinner. Lois becomes very angry when she learns about the strip club visit. She yells at Peter, "Peter, when I said bond with Stewie, this is not what I had in mind. I am furious with you." Lois wanted Peter and Stewie to spend time together and become closer, but she did not mean for Peter to take Stewie to adult places like strip clubs. She is extremely mad about Peter's poor choices. Stewie makes a joke while in Florida. He says, Florida. Just think, somewhere in this state right now, Jeb Bush is eating a live puppy. Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida at the time. Stewie imagines the governor doing something horrible by eating a living puppy. This is an insult, suggesting the governor is a monster. The episode includes a scene about a TV show. The announcer says, "We now return to ESPN's exclusive coverage to the Little League World Series. This is a real sports event where children play baseball." A character named Herbert responds, "Jackpot." Herbert is a creepy old man in Family Guy who is inappropriately interested in young boys. His excited response to children's sports implies he watches for wrong reasons. The episode's title, The Courtship of Stewie's Father, refers to Peter trying to win over Stewie's feelings like someone courting a romantic partner. Throughout the series, Stewie usually hates Peter. Peter and Stewie rarely spend time together. This episode changes that by having them become friends temporarily. Peter taking Stewie to a strip club shows extremely poor parenting judgment. Strip clubs are adult entertainment venues where people pay to watch dancers perform. These places serve alcohol and have adult themes. Bringing a baby to such a place is illegal in many areas and definitely inappropriate. No responsible parent would take their infant child to a strip club. Stewie's response about the strip club shows his unusual intelligence and adult perspective. Despite being a baby, he does not just say it was scary or confusing. Instead, he critiques the quality of the dancers like an adult customer would. He knows that different days have different quality performers. He understands that Tuesday afternoon is a slow time with less experienced or less attractive dancers. The best dancers work on busy nights when they can make more money. Seeing bullet wounds on dancers suggests these women have dangerous lives. They may be involved with violent people or work in dangerous neighborhoods. Bullet wounds are serious injuries from being shot with guns. The fact that Stewie saw multiple dancers with these injuries suggests violence is common in their world. This makes the strip club visit even more inappropriate for a child. Peter calling Lois Drippy shows disrespect for his wife. This nickname is not affectionate or cute. It sounds insulting and demeaning. Combined with immediately asking what is for dinner, Peter treats Lois like a servant rather than a partner. He does not greet her warmly or ask about her day. He just wants to know what food she will provide. Lois's angry outburst shows she has limits to her patience with Peter. Usually, Lois tolerates Peter's stupid behavior and tries to fix problems he creates. But taking their baby to a strip club crosses a major line. Her yelling in all capital letters in the transcript shows extreme anger. She specifically says this is not what she meant by bonding with Stewie. She wanted father-son activities, like playing games, going to parks, or doing projects together. Strip clubs are the opposite of appropriate father-son bonding. The Disney World setting creates contrast between wholesome and inappropriate content. Disney World is famous for being family-friendly entertainment designed for children. Parents take their kids to Disney World to create happy memories. The parks feature cartoon characters, rides, and shows suitable for all ages. But Peter uses this trip as cover for taking Stewie to adult places. He mixes the innocent Disney visit with the inappropriate strip club visit. The scene with Stewie being forced to sing while chained up parodies theme park experiences. The It's a Small World ride at Disney parks features dolls singing repetitive songs. Many visitors find this ride annoying because the same melody plays constantly. Having Stewie chained and forced to sing treats the experience like torture. The threat about making a Christmas movie with Tim Allen suggests being in certain family movies is punishment worse than physical restraint. Peter asking random questions instead of listening to advice shows his attention problems. Brian offers to help Peter fix his relationship with Stewie, but Peter cannot focus on this important topic. Instead of listening to Brian's advice, Peter immediately asks about geometry. A hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle. This math term has nothing to do with parent-child relationships. Peter's brain jumps to random topics instead of staying focused on what matters. Brian, recognizing this pattern, suggests Peter does this regularly. Brian asks if Peter wants actual advice or is just asking random questions again. The word again means this happens multiple times. Brian has learned that Peter often asks for help but does not really want it. Peter asks questions but then ignores the answers. This wastes Brian's time and prevents Peter from solving his problems. The Herbert scene about Little League Baseball is disturbing. Herbert is an elderly man who appears in multiple Family Guy episodes. He consistently shows inappropriate interest in young boys. When he sees children's sports on TV, he says jackpot, like he won the lottery. This implies he watches children's sports to look at young boys, not because he enjoys baseball. The show uses Herbert to make dark jokes about predatory behavior toward children. Stewie's excitement about Disney World shows his childish side. Usually, Stewie acts like an adult with sophisticated vocabulary and complex plans. But when he sees the Disney World sign, he becomes a normal, excited kid. He repeats Disney World multiple times and makes excited noises. This rare moment shows Stewie is still a child, despite his adult intelligence. Theme parks can make even genius babies act like regular kids. However, Stewie quickly returns to his usual personality. After getting excited, he remembers he was angry at Peter. He says, "I'm still mad at you," in a calm voice. This shows Stewie trying to maintain his grudge even though he is happy about going to Disney World. He does not want Peter to think everything is forgiven just because they are going somewhere fun. The Jeb Bush joke is a political insult. Jeb Bush served as Florida's governor from 1999 to 2007, so he was governor when this episode aired in 2005. Stewie imagines the governor eating a live puppy, which is an extreme and absurd accusation. Nobody actually eats live puppies. This hyperbolic insult suggests the governor is evil or monstrous. The show uses this type of exaggerated political humor to mock public figures. The Eisner scene likely references Michael Eisner, who was Disney CEO from 1984 to 2005. The episode aired in late 2005, around the time Eisner left Disney after facing criticism from shareholders. Peter accusing Eisner of betraying shareholders refers to real controversies about Disney's leadership during this period. Some investors thought Eisner made bad decisions that hurt the company's stock price. Using the Kali Ma chant from Indiana Jones makes this criticism dramatic and comedic. The news segment with Ollie Williams shows pointless reporting. Ollie is in a helicopter, looking down at people. He reports that everyone looks like ants. Tom Tucker explains this happens because Ollie is high up in the air. Ollie's report provides no useful information. He states an obvious fact that people look small from far away. This parodies TV news using helicopters to cover events even when the aerial view adds nothing valuable to the story. Tom Tucker mentioning an interview with Andrew Shue is a reference to 1990 Seconds television. Andrew Shue starred in the TV show Melrose Place, which was popular in the 1990 Seconds. By 2005, when this episode aired, Shue was less famous and rarely appeared in entertainment news. Mentioning an exclusive interview with him suggests the news station has boring content nobody wants to watch. An interview with a has-been actor from a canceled show would not attract many viewers. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Mr. Saturday Night. This episode starts with a major event. Mr. Weed dies. Mr. Weed is Peter's boss at the toy factory. The way he dies is by choking, which the script confirms when Death's dog asks, "Hey, did someone choke on a dinner roll?" And Brian says, "No, I recovered." This means someone else choked on something and died. When Mr. Weed's body is at the Griffin house, there is a knock on the door. A deep voice says, "Police, random dead body search." This scares Peter, Lois, and Brian. Peter panics and tries to flush Mr. Weed's dead body down the toilet. This is absurd comedy because a human body cannot fit down a toilet. This shows the unrealistic cartoon logic the show uses. The voice at the door is not really police. It is Death playing a prank. Death says, "Ha ha, nah, it is just me. I am only here to collect the dead body." Lois tells Peter to relax because it is only Death. Peter greets Death like an old friend, saying, "Oh, hey Death." This treats Death as a casual character who visits sometimes, which is unusual but normal for Family Guy. Death is a recurring character in the show. Death has a dog called Death's Dog. The dog also comes to collect bodies. When Death's dog asks about someone choking on a dinner roll, Brian admits he recovered from choking. Death's dog apologizes. This suggests Brian almost died from choking on a dinner roll earlier. Having Death's dog apologize for showing up when nobody died is strange dark humor. The episode involves Peter getting a job as a knight. The Black Knight gives Peter advice, saying, "The path to knighthood is paved with strength and nobility, not LSD and sideburns." This insult suggests Peter does not look like a proper knight. The mention of LSD refers to drugs from the 1,960 seconds and 1,970 seconds culture. The sideburns comment makes fun of Peter's appearance. The Black Knight criticizes Peter for not being noble or strong enough. There is a weather forecast scene with Tom Tucker and Ollie Williams. Tom introduces Ollie for the Black U weather forecast. Ollie Williams simply yells, "It's gone rain," and Tom thanks him. This is a recurring joke where Ollie gives extremely short weather reports by shouting a few words. The joke is that weather forecasts are usually long and detailed, but Ollie makes them as short as possible. Peter remembers working at the Electric Company, which was a real educational TV show from the 1,970 seconds. In the cutaway, Peter and another man spell words together by breaking them into parts. They say D and oat to make dot, then B and et to make bet. Peter says, "Bet, I knew that. Slow it down now," because he is struggling to keep up. When they get to F and at to make fat, Peter gets angry. The man called him fat through the word game. Peter says, "Oh, that's it, buddy," and presumably gets into a fight. This cutaway makes fun of educational children's shows and shows Peter getting upset about being called fat, even in an indirect way. At Chris's career day at school, Peter visits to talk about his job. He tells the kids he works at a toy factory. One boy immediately insults him, saying, "I bet you're just one of those low-level assembly line guys who stands there all day screwing heads on dolls." The boy makes fun of Peter's job as boring and unimportant. He mocks Peter by imitating someone struggling to put doll heads on straight, saying, "Ooh, is it on straight? I don't know." Then the boy says, "Boo," to show he thinks Peter's job is terrible. Peter gets angry at being insulted by a child. The teacher tells Peter that the boy plays kickball in the park after school, basically giving Peter permission to beat up a child later. This is dark humor, where adults approve of revenge against rude children. It shows Peter as immature for wanting to fight a kid who insulted him. Mort Goldman appears and mentions he was once addicted to antihistamines. Antihistamines are allergy medicines. Mort says, "I took so many I thought I was Mr. Peanut." Mr. Peanut is the mascot for Planters Peanuts, does yes, a cartoon peanut with a top hat, monocle, and cane. Mort's drug problem made him hallucinate that he was a corporate mascot. This is absurd comedy about addiction treated in a silly way. Peter discusses money problems with Lois. He says, "You know, since money's getting tight, I was gonna suggest that we eat the kids." This is a shocking statement about cannibalism and killing their own children. Peter explains he was gonna say it jokingly at first, but then I was gonna gauge your reaction, and if you were cool with it, we would go from there. This shows Peter seriously considering eating his children if Lois agreed. He planned to test her reaction before committing to the idea. This dark humor treats child murder as a potential money-saving solution. Peter has a confusing monologue about being called a fizzle. He says, "Nobody calls me a fizzle," and gets away with it, except that one guy who called me a fizzle, and then he ran off. He got away with it. Peter keeps contradicting himself, admitting that actually only one person ever called him a fizzle, and that person did get away with it. He concludes, "After today, only half the people who ever called me a fizzle will have gotten away with it." This means if Peter gets revenge on someone today, it will be one person getting revenge out of 2 total people who called him a fizzle. The joke is Peter's rambling logic and inability to make a clear threat. There is a scene with actress Margot Kidder. She screams, "A, A," and then says, "Forgot my purse," before continuing to scream, A. Margot Kidder played Lois Lane in Superman movies and had real-life mental health struggles. The joke references her erratic behavior in a mean-spirited way. She just screams constantly over forgetting her purse, which is excessive and strange. Stewie looks at people and says, "I'd do her, wouldn't do her, ugh, who hasn't done her, do her, lose the pigtails and we'll talk, do her. Stewie is a baby judging which women he would have sex with. This is inappropriate humor, where an infant talks about adult sexual activities. The joke is the contrast between Stewie being a baby and talking like an adult man rating women's attractiveness. Peter dresses as a prostitute to do something. When Meg sees him, she says, "Oh my God," in shock at her father dressed as a sex worker. Peter approaches the car and says, "Hey, looking for a good time, sweet cheeks?" propositioning his own family for prostitution. Lois tells him to get in the car. Peter says, "Okay, but it'll cost you. What do you want, a Cleveland steamer?" A Cleveland steamer is a sexual act involving defecation that is too inappropriate to explain in detail. Lois asks what a Cleveland steamer is, showing she does not know this crude term. Brian starts to explain, it means that heel, but gets interrupted when a police car passes. Peter says, whoa, 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 be cool, and pretends to give directions to avoid police attention. He asks, so, you want a party, or what? Still pretending to be a prostitute. Lois demands Peter get in the car and he complies. Stewie says, it's eerie, isn't it? Like looking into the future, suggesting Meg will become a prostitute, like her father is pretending to be. This is dark humor, insulting Meg. The Black Knight insults someone's weight by saying, what's your fat ass doing here? Bruce responds, he's my only means of conveyance, but I guess I do spoil him. Bruce is talking about his horse, which he admits he spoils with too much food, making the horse fat. The Black Knight agrees, clearly, you do. This is a simple joke about an overweight horse. Mort Goldman has a triumphant moment saying, take that, you bastard. Nobody makes a fool out of Mort Goldman. This shows Mort getting revenge on someone, probably the Black Knight in the joust. Mort usually gets bullied and disrespected, so him winning is unusual. Lois references The Honeymooners, a classic 1,950 seconds TV sitcom. She says, remember that episode of The Honeymooners when Ralph lost his job, but at the end of the show he didn't get it back? Most sitcom episodes return to normal by the end, so an episode where problems don't get solved is unusual. Peter responds, oh yeah, what was up with that? That bugged the crap out of me. Both Peter and Lois were bothered by a sitcom episode that did not have a happy ending. This jokes about how TV shows usually resolve problems neatly. This episode has several elements that make it less normal. The episode starts with Peter's boss dying. A character death is a significant event that changes the show's status quo. Peter loses his job at the toy factory, which is a major change. Death appearing as a casual character is fantasy. Death talks and makes jokes and has a dog. This is supernatural and unrealistic. Peter working as a knight at what seems to be a Renaissance fair is unusual. Most episodes have Peter in regular jobs, not costume jobs. Peter dressing as a prostitute and propositioning his family is extremely inappropriate and not typical episode content. The episode has dark humor about cannibalism, drug addiction, child abuse, and sexual content involving a baby. However, some elements are normal for Family Guy. Cutaway gags to random pop culture references are standard. The Electric Company cutaway and the Honeymooners reference are typical. Ollie Williams' weather reports appear in many episodes. Death is a recurring character, so his appearance is not completely unusual. The episode has the typical structure of Peter getting into trouble and dealing with consequences. Overall, this episode is less normal than average because of the job change, character death, and especially inappropriate content with Peter as a prostitute. The dark jokes about eating children and the sexual content push boundaries more than typical episodes. A more normal episode would have Peter at his regular job, no major character deaths, and fewer extreme sexual jokes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Peter's Two Dads. Peter's Two Dads aired on the 11th of February 2007 during Family Guy's 5th season. The episode was written by Danny Smith and directed by Cindy Tang. This episode tells the story of Peter's father Francis dying and Peter discovering he might have a different biological father in Ireland. The episode deals with death, family secrets, and Peter's relationship with both his fathers. The episode begins with Peter and Lois realizing they forgot something important about their daughter Meg. Lois asks Peter, what's she talking about? A party for what? Peter guesses wildly, saying, I don't know. Did she have her period or something? Is she getting married? Lois responds, no. If she was getting married, we probably would have seen a guy around, right? Peter agrees by saying, sound reasoning. Neither parent knows what party Meg wants. Chris tells his parents the answer. He says, you guys, it's Meg's birthday next week. Peter and Lois completely forgot that Meg's birthday is coming up. This shows how little attention they pay to Meg compared to their other children. The conversation continues with Peter and Lois trying to figure out how old Meg is. Peter asks Lois, yeah, how old is Meg? Lois admits, I don't know. Peter is shocked and says, well, my God, Lois, I thought you were the one keeping track of that. Lois confesses, oh no, I have no idea. Don't you remember me faking my way through her last birthday? She then asks, should we just ask her how old she is? Peter thinks asking Meg her age would be awkward. He suggests instead, maybe we should just cut off her leg and count the rings. This jokes about how you can tell a tree's age by cutting it down and counting the rings in the wood. Peter laughs at his own joke. Lois adds another suggestion, saying, yeah, or maybe try carbon dating. They both laugh together. Carbon dating is a scientific method for determining the age of old objects. Peter then admits, I don't know what that is. He laughed at Lois's joke without understanding it. Later, Lois tries to discipline Meg, but realizes she does not know if the punishment fits Meg's age. She says, Meg, that kind of language is not appropriate for a girl your age. Or is it? Lois trails off uncertainly because she genuinely does not know how old Meg is or what is appropriate for her age. The episode includes a scene with Brian making reservations somewhere. Stewie pretends to be someone named Mrs. Penapple on the phone. He uses a fake high voice and says, hello, it's Mrs. Penapple again. Shall I put you down for 2, Brendan? Brian corrects him, Brian. Stewie, still in the fake voice, says, Ryan? Brian repeats, Brian. Stewie tries again with Mitchell. Brian just says, what? Stewie ends the call by saying, goodbye. Stewie keeps getting Brian's name wrong on purpose to annoy him. Quagmire appears in a scene and makes an inappropriate comment. He says, he. So, which one of you wants to lose your virginity? This shows Quagmire being inappropriate around young people, which is his character's typical behavior. There is a scene involving an Asian Santa Claus at what appears to be a mall or store. Stewie sits on Asian Santa's lap. Asian Santa asks, what you want for Christmas? Stewie starts to answer, I was thinking one of those old-timey. But Asian Santa interrupts him, yelling, too late, take too long, sad Christmas. He throws Stewie off his lap. An Asian kid immediately gets put on Santa's lap. Asian Santa asks, what you want? The kid answers, fire truck. Asian Santa asks, what color? The kid says, red. Asian Santa immediately yells, next, and throws this kid off too. The kid screams, Osh, as he gets tossed away. This Santa processes children very quickly and has no patience for anyone who takes time to think about their Christmas wish. The main story involves Peter's father, Francis, getting seriously injured. Peter accidentally hurts his father very badly. A doctor named Dr. Hartman examines Francis. Lois asks, how is he, doctor? Doctor. Hartman delivers terrible news, saying, Mrs. Griffin, his internal injuries were much too severe. I'd estimate he'll be dead within the hour. Francis will die soon from his injuries. Peter visits his dying father and apologizes. He says, Dad, I'm sorry that I broke all of your ribs, busted your spleen, and punctured your lung. I don't know if you can hear me right now, but I hope you know. I love you, Dad. Peter caused massive internal damage to Francis, including broken ribs, a busted spleen, and a punctured lung. Despite these serious injuries being Peter's fault, Peter tells his father he loves him. Francis responds to Peter one final time. He says, Peter, come closer. There's something I need to say to you. Peter moves closer and asks, I'm here, Dad. What is it? Francis uses his last words to insult his son. He says, Peter, you're a fat, stinking drunk. Then Francis dies. Instead of saying something loving or forgiving, Francis's final words to Peter are an insult, calling him fat and an alcoholic. Peter panics when he realizes his father is dead. He says, oh my God, he's dead. He can't be dead. There's got to be something I can do. Maybe I'll bury him in the pet cemetery. The scene cuts to a pet cemetery where Peter buries Francis. However, Francis comes back as a zombie. Peter hits the zombie with a shovel to stop it. Peter then says, okay, I'll bury him in a regular cemetery. This parodies the Stephen King movie Pet Sematary, where people buried in a certain cemetery come back to life as evil zombies. After his father's death, Peter starts using drugs. Brian finds him and asks, Peter, what are you doing? Peter answers simply, crack. Brian responds with shock, what the fuck? Peter tries to justify it by saying, hey, at least, I'm not drinking, Brian. Peter acts like smoking crack cocaine is better than drinking alcohol. Brian points out the obvious problem. Yeah, this isn't exactly a good substitute. Where'd you get crack? Peter explains where he bought the crack. He says, from Black's. Brian asks, what? For clarification. Peter continues, yeah, right behind Black's hardware store. There's a white guy selling it. Peter bought crack from a drug dealer who sells behind a hardware store called Black's. The dealer is a white man, which Peter specifically mentions. Stewie has a strange moment where he talks about his psychological problems. He says, come on, discipline me, make me wear panties, rub dirt in my eye, violate me with a wine bottle. My God, I really do have problems, don't I? Stewie lists disturbing things he wants done to him and then recognizes this desire indicates he has serious psychological issues. Brian checks on Peter later and gets shocked by what he sees. Brian says, "Hey Peter, just thought I'd check on you." Oh my God. Peter is clearly under the influence of drugs. Peter says, in a slurred voice, "Government came and took my baby." He sounds paranoid and incoherent from the drugs. A character named Bruce makes a strange comment about anatomy. He says, "You know, the anus has the second highest density of nerve endings in the body." This is Bruce sharing an inappropriate fact. Peter responds, "Oh my God, I could have had a V8. This references an old V8 vegetable juice commercial where people realize they made a mistake. Peter learns information that makes him question his parentage. He tells Lois, "I don't know, Lois. All I know is somewhere in the great land of Ireland, there's a big fat bastard who looks like me." Peter believes his real biological father might be an Irish man who resembles him physically. Meg shows affection when Peter prepares to leave on a trip. She says, "Come back soon, Daddy. I love you." Peter responds coldly, "That'll do, pig, that'll do." This quotes a line from the movie Babe, where the farmer tells the pig it did well. Peter compares his daughter to a pig instead of saying he loves her back. Peter makes a factually incorrect statement about Ireland. He says, "You know, Ireland has more drunks per capita than people." This sentence does not make mathematical sense. You cannot have more of something per capita than the total population. Peter means to say Ireland has a high rate of alcoholism, but phrases it incorrectly. The episode shows Peter arriving in Ireland. An Irish man describes the village, saying, "Aye, it is McSwiggan village, where the hills are green, the streams are clear, and the sweaters are so thick. Even the boniest fingered nun could poke you in the chest and it wouldn't bother you none." He describes a stereotypical Irish village with green hills and clear streams. He also mentions thick sweaters that protect against being poked in the chest. Peter meets a man named Mickey McFinnigan who might be his father. Mickey introduces himself by saying, "Top of the morning, laddies. Let me cut ya an Irish rose." He then farts loudly. Mickey continues, "I don't know exactly where the County Cork is, but I know where it should be. County Cork is a real place in Ireland." But Mickey makes a joke about the word Cork relating to his fart. Mickey denies Peter is his son. He says, "You can't be my son. Just ask my sheep, O'Brien." A sheep named O'Brien then talks. The sheep says, "Whose leg do you have to hump to get a pint of Guinness around here?" This implies Mickey has inappropriate relations with his sheep. O'Brien the sheep acts like a regular character who drinks beer and speaks in full sentences. Brian and Peter sit together on a bench. Brian points out Peter's unusual situation. He says, "Boy, it's amazing, isn't it? You get two fathers, and neither one of them wants anything to do with you." Peter has Francis, who just died after insulting him, and potentially Mickey, who denies being his father. Both fathers reject Peter. Peter thinks about how to prove himself to Mickey. He says, "There's got to be some way I can make him see that I'm worthy of being his son. About the only way I can ever impress him is if I was a fat, stinkin' drunk." Peter realizes that being a drunk might be the only way to make Mickey accept him as his son. Suddenly, the ghost of Francis appears to Peter. Francis's ghost says, "Peter, you are a fat, stinking drunk." Peter asks, "What?" Then, Francis's ghost appears alongside the ghosts of Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. All three ghosts together say, "You're a fat, stinking drunk." Obi-Wan Kenobi's ghost adds, "Yes, from what he told us, that's right on the money." Yoda's ghost tells Peter, "Challenge him, you must." Then another ghost appears. It is Hayden Christensen, the actor who played Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars prequels. His ghost says, "And I'm Hayden Christensen." Unlike the other ghosts who give advice, Hayden just introduces himself without saying anything helpful. Peter decides to challenge Mickey to a drinking contest. Before the contest starts, O'Brien the sheep makes a bet. He says, "I bet 20 on the fat one." Then both O'Brien and Brian realize there is a problem. They both say together, "Which one's the fat one?" This is funny because both Peter and Mickey are fat, so the bet is unclear. Peter wins the drinking contest. He wakes up confused and asks, "What happened?" Brian tells him, "Peter, you won." Mickey McFinnigan admits defeat by saying, "By God, nobody's ever beaten me at the game of drink." Peter asks him, "Now do you believe that you're my dad?" Mickey responds, "Nobody but a McFinnigan could handle that much of the creature. You're the broth of me own stubby shillelagh, all right. Welcome to my family, Peter." Mickey finally accepts Peter as his son because Peter proved he can drink large amounts of alcohol like a true McFinnigan. The episode includes a scene at an airport. Peter waits in line behind actor Robert Loggia. The airport agent asks, "May I have your name, please?" Robert Loggia answers, "Robert Loggia." The agent asks, "Can you spell that for me?" Robert Loggia says, "Certainly, that's Robert Loggia. R, as in Robert Loggia. O, as in, oh my God, it's Robert Loggia. B, as in, by God, that's Robert Loggia. E, as in, everybody loves Robert Loggia. R, as in, Robert Loggia. T, as in Tim, look over there, it's Robert Loggia. Space, L, as in look, it's Robert Loggia." Robert Loggia spells his own name by using his full name for every single letter. This takes a very long time and annoys Peter, who is stuck waiting behind him. At some point, Peter dresses up as a character. He introduces himself by saying, "Hey kids, I'm Pee Pants, the inebriated hobo clown. I'm an adorable tramp who wears found clothing and eats out of your garbage can." Peter creates a clown character who is drunk and homeless. This inappropriate character for children is called Pee Pants and admits to being drunk, wearing clothes found in trash, and eating garbage. The episode deals with serious themes mixed with comedy. Francis dying after insulting Peter shows their difficult relationship never improved. Francis spent his life being mean to Peter and used his final breath to insult him one more time. Peter never got the loving father he wanted from Francis. Peter's drug use after his father's death shows him coping poorly with grief. Instead of processing his emotions in healthy ways, Peter turns to crack cocaine. Brian's shocked reaction shows how dangerous and wrong this choice is. Peter tries to defend using crack by saying it is better than alcohol, but crack cocaine is an extremely dangerous and addictive drug. The Ireland storyline uses Irish stereotypes throughout. The episode portrays Irish people as heavy drinkers who live in quaint villages. Mickey McFinnigan represents an exaggerated Irish character who farts, drinks constantly, and possibly has sex with farm animals. The talking sheep O'Brien adds to the absurdity by acting like a regular drinking buddy. Peter, having to prove himself through drinking, sends a troubling message. The only way Mickey accepts Peter as his son is by demonstrating alcoholism. Being able to drink dangerous amounts of alcohol becomes a point of pride and proof of family connection. This glorifies drinking culture and makes alcoholism seem like an achievement rather than a problem. The Star Wars ghost scene parodies Return of the Jedi, where Luke Skywalker sees the ghosts of his mentors. But instead of wise advice, the ghosts just confirm that Peter is fat and drunk. Adding Hayden Christensen's ghost, who contributes nothing, makes fun of the Star Wars prequels and that actor's role in them. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Stewie loves Lois. This episode has two main storylines that run at the same time. The first story is about Peter getting a prostate exam from Dr. Hartman and misunderstanding what happened. The second story is about Stewie becoming overly attached to Lois after she saves his teddy bear, Rupert. Both stories are typical Family Guy plots with misunderstandings leading to conflict. The prostate exam story. The episode begins with Peter at the doctor's office. Dr. Hartman tells Peter, "Well, you're 42 years old, and it says here, you've never had a prostate exam." Peter has never had this medical test before. Peter responds that he has had other exams, like one in college. There's a cutaway to Peter in a college classroom. Peter has his head down on his desk and says, "Damn it, this is too hard." He throws his pencil off the table. Peter walks up to his teacher and says, "Here's what I think of your test, Mr. Teacher." Peter rips the test paper in half, rubs it against his butt, and throws it on the floor. This is Peter, rebelling against a difficult test. The teacher responds, "You just stood up to me. Congratulations, that was the test." The whole test was actually about standing up to authority, not answering questions. Peter gasps and shakes hands with the teacher. Peter runs across the college grounds until he runs into a flock of birds. He jumps with them, and the scene freezes with Peter yelling, "Yeah!" This cutaway shows Peter's past success with an unusual exam, which contrasts with what is about to happen with the prostate exam. There is a brief scene with a judge who says, "Sit down, you rapist." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to wait until I've heard everything." This joke shows the judge making an assumption before hearing evidence. This foreshadows Peter later accusing Dr. Hartman incorrectly. Back at the doctor's office, Dr. Hartman says, "Peter's heart sounds good." Then Dr. Hartman tells Peter, "I just gonna need you to drop your pants and we'll check your prostate." Peter asks, "What?" He does not understand what this exam involves. Doctor Hartman instructs, drop your pants, turn around and lean forward. Peter agrees and says okay. Peter pulls his pants and underpants down. Doctor, Hartman puts on a rubber glove. Peter asks, so, how's this work? You just feel my pulse? Or, then Peter screams, A-A-A-H-H-H-H-H. Peter flails around and crashes into a shelf. Peter yells, what the hell was that? Peter is shocked and confused about what just happened. Dr. Hartman explains, Mr. Griffin, that's a prostate exam. Peter responds angrily, shut up, you had your finger in my ass. Peter does not understand. This is a normal medical procedure, doctor. Hartman tries to explain, that's how a prostate exam is performed. Now, if you'll just let me. Peter refuses and yells, get away from me. Peter runs out of the room, crying with his pants still around his ankles. He runs out of the hospital and past Mayor Adam West, who is sitting on a park bench. Mayor West says, get a tan as a random insult. When Peter gets home, Lois asks, Peter, my God, you look terrible. What happened? Peter says slowly, I was raped. Lois chuckles and says, what? Peter explains, Dr. Hartman violated me. He took my innocence. Lois chuckles harder and asks, what? Peter whispers something in her ear. Lois then explains, Peter, that's a prostate exam. It's an important part of a physical for men your age. Peter does not accept this explanation. He yells, you sound just like him, and runs off sobbing. Lois calls Peter a fucking idiot after he leaves. This shows Lois's frustration with Peter's stupidity. The word choice is unusual for Lois, who normally does not curse directly like this, but it emphasizes how ridiculous Peter is being. Brian tries to help Peter feel better by suggesting they watch TV. The TV shows We Now Return to Freddy Got Fingered. This is a real movie from 2001 where the title refers to false accusations. Peter says, oh, God, and changes the channel. The next channel shows E.T., the alien saying, ouch, while holding his glowing finger out. Peter yells, oh God, again because the finger reminds him of the exam. Then, a commercial plays with a voice saying, yellow pages, let your fingers do the walking. The phrase about fingers walking triggers Peter again. Peter screams, A-A-triple-H-H-H-H-H, and runs upstairs crying. He passes Chris, who is wearing a foam finger for a baseball game. Chris asks, are we still going to the baseball game? Peter yells, get that away from me, Chris, and keeps running. Peter passes Chris's room where the evil monkey emerges and points threateningly at Peter. The evil monkey is a recurring character who lives in Chris's closet and points at people. Peter yells, stop it, Meg. Even though the evil monkey is not Meg, this is a mistake Peter makes while upset. The joke is Peter blaming the wrong person in his distressed state. Peter meets with his friends, Cleveland, Quagmire, and Joe. Peter tells them, guys, I went to Dr. Hartman yesterday and he did things to my fanny. Cleveland tells Peter, it's okay. Peter insists, it's not okay. You don't know what it's like. Cleveland responds, you're wrong. I too have felt the cold finger of injustice on my insidey parts. This means Cleveland also had a prostate exam that he misunderstood. Peter asks, he did it to you too? Quagmire then speaks up, I have something to say. Dr. Hartman violated me as well. I only went in there for a physical divided by guinea pig removal, but I turned out to be the guinea pig for his sexual experimentation. Quagmire claims he went to remove an actual guinea pig pet, but instead, Dr. Hartman used him for experiments. Quagmire is exaggerating and misunderstanding the exam like Peter. Joe initially calls them a bunch of queers and leaves. But Joe comes back crying and admits, and so am I. Oh God, it was horrible. I scrubbed and I scrubbed, but damn in, they don't make water hot enough. Even Joe, who is usually tough, admits he was traumatized by his prostate exam. All four men have completely misunderstood a standard medical procedure. Peter declares, my God, we've all been victims of Dr. Hartman's prostate exam. Well, gentlemen, the abuse stops here. I will not turn a brown eye to this. Peter makes many puns about butts and anuses. He says, I am gonna sue that bastard and make him pay out the ass. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm gonna be really anal about this. Sphincter. Peter ends by just saying the word sphincter, which is the medical term for the anal muscle. The joke is Peter making as many butt-related puns as possible while discussing his lawsuit. The Stewie and Lois story. This storyline begins with Stewie in a good mood. He tells Lois, good morning, cheerfully. Lois notices, my Stewie, you're in a good mood today. Stewie explains, oh, why shouldn't I be? You saved Rupert's life, and I love you for it. Rupert is Stewie's teddy bear. Lois saved Rupert somehow, which made Stewie grateful. Stewie says, so warn the villagers, here comes the cuddle monster, and presumably hugs Lois. There is a scene with Peter touching Lois's breasts and talking to her nipple. Peter says, oh, Lois, your breasts are great. Well, good morning, Mr. Nipple. Hey, there, must be cold in here. What do you say we move south a little bit? There we go. Oh, you are so ready. This is Peter being sexually inappropriate in front of their children. The scene shows typical Family Guy sexual humor. Stewie tells Lois, I love you, Lois. You know that, right? Just in case, I'll say it again. I love you. Lois responds warmly. Oh, you are just so cute, sweetie. Look at that little foot. I'm gonna eat that foot. Lois pretends to eat Stewie's foot playfully. Stewie laughs. Lois says, give me that foot. It looks delicious. Stewie responds, don't eat my foot. Oh God. Oh, it is so hard to find funny women. And you are hilarious. Oh, you're like a female Bonnie Hunt. Bonnie Hunt is a real comedian and actress. Stewie is complimenting Lois by comparing her to a professional funny person. Lois tells Stewie to sit and wait while she gets Rupert so he can eat with Stewie. Stewie says, oh God, thoughtful, appreciating Lois's kindness. Brian tells Lois he made coffee. Lois thanks him. Stewie then asks Brian, could you not talk to Lois anymore? Brian is confused and asks, what? Stewie explains, you know, it's just that I'm tired of you hitting on her, that's all. It's not cool. Stewie is becoming jealous and possessive of Lois's attention. Brian defends himself. I was just making coffee. I didn't hit on her. Besides, Lois is my friend. I'll do whatever the hell I want. Stewie asks nicely. I'm asking you nicely, Brian. Stop hitting on her. Brian refuses. That's ridiculous. Just because you're a little mama's boy now, it means you're monopolizing all her time so nobody else can get a shot at her? Brian then admits, you know what? Fine. Just a little. I do hit on Lois. This is Brian confessing he has romantic feelings for Lois. Stewie gets angry. I see the way you look at her. I see it. And it's gonna stop. Lois is my queen now. And listen you, te mato pero feo. ¿Me entiendes, estúpido? Tú eres un imbécil. Te odio. Odio. Stewie suddenly starts speaking Spanish, threatening Brian. He calls Brian an ugly dog and says he hates him. Brian is confused. And another, what? Stewie explains, sorry, I fell asleep watching Sábado Gigante last night. Sábado Gigante was a real Spanish language variety show. The joke is, Stewie accidentally learned Spanish from falling asleep with the TV on. Later, Stewie tries to play with Lois. He suggests, Lois, you know what we should do? We should play restaurant with my Play-Doh. I'll make you a hamburger. Perhaps I'll make it blue. Oh, can you imagine such a world? Stewie imagines making a blue Play-Doh hamburger as something exciting and impossible. Lois tells Stewie, I love you, but you're wearing mommy out. Now, it's time for bed. Lois is getting exhausted from Stewie's constant attention. Stewie whispers to Lois, I have a secret for you. Then he whispers, you're awesome, in her ear. This shows Stewie being overly affectionate and clingy. There is a TV news report. Tom Tucker says, our top story. A local woman loses her sex drive after a $125 dinner at Alfredo's. This is an unrelated joke about an expensive dinner failing to lead to sex. Diane Simmons then reports, but first, in medical news, Dr. Elmer Hartman, beloved family doctor to all of Quahog, is the target of a molestation lawsuit. This confirms Peter has filed his lawsuit. The trial starts tomorrow. The news returns to Native American What's Happening, which is a parody of the 1970-second sitcom What's Happening, but with Native Americans instead of black characters. This is Family Guy making fun of how TV shows could theoretically swap out ethnic groups. Lois complains to Peter, I don't know how much more I can take. Stewie used to be so independent, but now he clings to me night and day. I'm exhausted. Peter dismisses her concerns. Oh, look at me. I'm Lois. The sun revolves around me. I'm the one going to court tomorrow. Peter mocks Lois and makes her problem seem insignificant compared to his lawsuit. Lois asks, isn't there anything I can do to talk you out of this lawsuit? Peter insists, hey, I was violated sexually and that man is gonna pay. Lois tries again, and I suppose it wouldn't matter if I told you for the 50th time that it's a legitimate medical procedure to test for cancer. This confirms Lois has explained the truth many times, but Peter refuses to listen. Stewie interrupts by calling for Lois repeatedly. Lois sighs. Stewie keeps yelling, Lois, Lois, Mom, Mom, Mommy, Mommy. Stewie calls Lois by every possible variation of mother repeatedly. Finally, Lois yells, "What?" Stewie simply responds, "Hi." This shows Stewie demanding attention just to say hello, which is annoying behavior. Stewie talks to Lois about her hair. He says, "I have so much fun when we hang out, Lois. And I love your hair. We should make up a name for your hair color. We could call it, like Strawberry Sunset, or Ginger Maiden, or one of those hair color names that's a random noun like Temptress. Oh, at some point you have to let me braid it." Stewie wants to name Lois's hair color with creative names and braid her hair. He is being overly attached. Stewie asks, "Lois, what are you doing?" "Arg." Then Lois says, oh my god, what's happening to me? I'm like that Texas woman who gave her son brain damage by holding him underwater. I'm just like Barbara Bush." This means Lois almost drowned Stewie in the bathtub or sink because she was so frustrated. Lois compares herself to Andrea Yates, a real Texas woman who killed her children by drowning them. Lois also mentions Barbara Bush, the former First Lady, as another comparison. The joke is dark. Lois almost murdered her child due to exhaustion. Lois tells Brian, "What kind of a mother has homicidal thoughts about her own baby?" "I'm a horrible person." Brian comforts her. "Lois, you're just exhausted. How you've got to break Stewie of this new overdependence on you." Brian suggests a solution to the problem instead of judging Lois. Stewie offers Lois, "I've got a surprise for you. You and I are going to see Eddie Money." Eddie Money was a real rock musician. Stewie says, 2 tickets, won them on the radio. We're gonna have a ball." Stewie plans an outing for just him and Lois, continuing his obsessive behavior. Brian observes, "He's like a totally different person, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Sulu." This combines the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Mr. Sulu from Star Trek. There is a cutaway to Mr. Sulu saying, "Oh no, I never should have drunk those chemicals. Hello." Sulu transforms into a different person after drinking chemicals, similar to Dr. Jekyll. Sulu's catchphrase was saying hello in a distinctive way. The cutaway combines these two references, the lawsuit and medical crisis. Peter is with his friends when Joe notices, "Peter, you're urinating unusually frequently." Quagmire agrees. "Yeah, what gives?" Seamus, another friend who talks like a pirate, explains, "If it's gale force peeing ye be doin', it could mean you've got barnacles on your prostate. Best have sickbay check below your decks." Seamus uses nautical terms to explain Peter might have a prostate problem. He asks, "How are you liking all these nautical puns?" Joe says, "Cute." Quagmire says, "Not bad." Cleveland says, "Somewhat entertaining." The friends give their opinions on Seamus's puns. Peter realizes, "My god, I'd better see a doctor." Joe points out, "But no doctor in town will see you after that lawsuit." Peter sued Dr. Hartman, so now all doctors in town refuse to treat Peter. Peter decides, well, then I'll just find a doctor out of town. Peter goes to a high-tech room with advanced medical equipment. He asks, "Listen, I know I'm not a regular patient, but I think I have some trouble with my prostate. So can you help me out, Dr. McCoy?" Dr. McCoy is from Star Trek. McCoy responds, "What? So you can sue me too?" Even the Star Trek doctor knows about Peter's lawsuit. Peter says, "Oh, come on, it'll only take a sec." Dr. McCoy refuses, "Forget it. I'm a doctor, not a patsy." This references McCoy's famous catchphrase, "I'm a doctor, not a," where he refuses to do things outside his expertise. Here he refuses because he does not want to be sued. Mr. Sulu walks past and says, "Hello, O," in his distinctive way. Lois tries to break Stewie's dependence. Stewie wants to sleep in Lois's bed. Lois says, "Good night, honey. I love you. This is for your own good," and closes the door, leaving Stewie alone. Stewie asks, "Lois, wait, where are you going? Lois, 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 answer me." Lois closes the door. Stewie yells, "Damn you, I will not be ignored. Get back in here and love me." Stewie screams, "Look it, S," dramatically. This scene references the movie Fatal Attraction, where Glenn Close's character becomes obsessed and says, "I will not be ignored." Stewie is acting like a stalker or obsessed lover rather than a baby. Lois worries, "Maybe I should go in. He's so upset." Brian advises, "He's just being melodramatic. You've got to ignore it if you want to help him." Lois notices something and asks, "Are you flexing?" Brian was flexing his muscles to impress Lois. Brian denies it awkwardly. "What? Me? No. Why would I be flexing? I mean, I have sort of been hitting the gym, so if you wanted to see how it's going." Goge. Brian makes a sound effect while flexing. This shows Brian trying to show off his body to Lois. Stewie tries to get attention by faking an emergency. He yells, "Lois, help! I ate this whole jar of pills that look like candy, and now I feel sick." Stewie is lying about taking pills. Brian tells him, "You look like a jackass." Stewie responds, "Can't hear you, Brian. I'm dead." Stewie pretends to be dead. Brian says, "All right," and leaves. Stewie is offended. "What did you do?" "Oh, that is so not cool, that his fake death did not work." Stewie then hurts himself for real. He yells, "Mommy, I'm dying, I said I'm dying, hey, I'm dying up here. What is this, a Tommy Lee pool party?" Tommy Lee is a rock drummer known for wild parties. Stewie complains that nobody is paying attention to him dying. He says, "Come on, Lois, get with," and then screams, "Arr," and sobs, "Ow." Stewie has actually broken his arm falling. Lois gasps, "Oh my God, Stewie, are you all right? Oh my sweet baby. And to think I ignored your cries for attention. I'm so sorry, honey. Never again, Stewie. I'm gonna give you all the love could ever want." Lois feels guilty for ignoring Stewie when he really got hurt. Stewie is angry now. He says, "Forget it, you swag-bellied measle. You had your chance and you blew it. Well now, you're too late. I hope they charge you with child abuse for my broken arm. I'll testify against you, just like I did against Michael Jackson." There is a flashback to Stewie in a courtroom during the Michael Jackson trial. A prosecutor asks, "Stewie, did Mr. Jackson behave inappropriately toward you?" Stewie responds, "Well, yes, but the worst part was he never called back." "No, but in all seriousness, yeah, he was actually pretty aggressive." This jokes about the real Michael Jackson child abuse trials. Stewie claims Jackson molested him but is more upset that Jackson did not call him afterward. Then Stewie admits Jackson was actually pretty aggressive, which confirms abuse happened. This is dark humor about real child abuse allegations. Peter's desperate plan. Peter disguises himself as a delivery person. He tells Dr. Hartman, package for Dr. Hartman." Dr. Hartman asks, "Where's the package?" Peter points, "Here it is." So why don't you go ahead and open it up and reach on in there? It's probably cookies or something." Peter wants Dr. Hartman to reach into a package, which would be similar to the prostate exam. Peter is trying to trick Dr. Hartman. Dr. Hartman gets suspicious. "Wait a minute, there's something strange about this. I wasn't expecting any package. Who are you?" "Griffin." Dr. Hartman recognizes Peter. Peter begs, "You gotta help me, Dr. Hartman. I think there may actually be something wrong with my prostate." Dr. Hartman refuses. "Well, don't look at me. I lost my license, thanks to you." The lawsuit made Dr. Hartman lose his medical license. Peter apologizes. "Look, I know what I did was wrong, but you're the only one I can turn to. So, I'm asking you, as a man with no more options, will you take a look in my ass?" Peter finally admits he needs the exam and asks Dr. Hartman directly. Dr. Hartman agrees. "Despite everything that's happened, I suppose I can't ignore my Hippocratic oath." "All right, drop your pants." The Hippocratic oath requires doctors to help people who need medical care. Peter pulls his pants and underpants down. Dr. Hartman puts on a glove and examines Peter. Dr. Hartman finds, "Oh, well, this is nothing. Just a little swelling. Probably a minor infection. Looks like there's some blockage." "What the devil is that, doctor?" Hartman discovers something unusual. Mr. Sulu emerges from Peter's butt and says, "Hello." This reveals Mr. Sulu has been inside Peter the whole time, which is absurd and impossible. The joke combines the earlier Star Trek references with a ridiculous reveal. Peter says, "And to think I actually thought you raped me." Dr. Hartman responds, "Well, I was going to, but you ran out of the room." This is a dark joke where Dr. Hartman admits he actually planned to assault Peter, but Peter escaped by running away. Peter yells, "What?" Dr. Hartman makes a noise, and Peter responds, "Eh." Both make awkward noises. Unclear if this was a joke or a real confession. There is a scene of Peter in the bathroom having a breakdown. Peter slashes his hair off. Peter talks to his reflection. "Who's that? Who are you? Where's Peter? Where is he?" "You're a whore." Peter calls himself a whore. He begins scribbling over his face with lipstick saying, "Wear your whore makeup, you whore." This shows Peter having a mental breakdown after feeling violated. Chris asks, off screen, "Is someone in there?" Peter responds, "Occupado, filthy whore. You're somebody's father, you filthy whore." Peter continues calling himself a whore. This scene shows serious psychological trauma presented as dark comedy. An elderly woman calls Peter, "You're a monster." Peter responds, "You know what was a monster? Frampton comes alive, 1976. Is there anyone you knew who didn't have that record? I don't think so. Peter deflects by talking about a Peter Frampton album from 1976 that was extremely popular. Instead of addressing the accusation, Peter discusses classic rock. Peter says, "I'm not going to stand for this. Too many people get away with injustice, like the folks you meet in those Louisiana swamps." There is a cutaway to Kermit the Frog playing his banjo in a swamp, similar to The Muppet Movie. A black man rows by in a rowboat and asks, "Excuse me, do you know how to get to town?" Kermit responds, "Yeah, it's back the way you came." This seems like helpful directions, but sending the man back the way he came means Kermit is not actually helping. The joke suggests Kermit is preventing the black man from reaching town, implying racism. Meg mentions, "You know, Dad, there's this lawyer at the mall who says he'll take any case, no matter how frivolous." Peter responds, Yeah. Chris adds, and they also have an Orange Julius. Orange Julius is a drink shop at malls. Chris says, just trying to keep the conversation going after nobody responds to his comment. This is a simple joke about Chris trying to contribute but saying something irrelevant. Peter randomly says, Family Guy was recorded on tape before a live audience. This breaks the fourth wall by mentioning the show itself. Family Guy is not actually recorded before a live audience, so this is Peter making a false statement. The joke references old sitcoms that would say this at the end of episodes. The trial. At court, Dr. Hartman argues, "Your Honor, I can't believe you're even listening to this. For God's sake, you're a patient of mine. I gave you a prostate exam last year. Don't you remember?" The judge is also Dr. Hartman's patient. The judge responds, "Come to think of it, I remember it as a pretty standard exam." The judge initially remembers the exam as normal and appropriate. Peter manipulates the judge. "Are you sure, Judge? Are you sure it wasn't all evil and grainy and black and white? Think about it." Peter suggests the judge remember the exam as evil and filmed in black and white like an old horror movie. The scene cuts to the judge's imagination shown in black and white. The judge imagines the prostate exam happening on a pirate ship with Dr. Hartman dressed as a pirate raping him. This is the judge reimagining a normal medical exam as a violent assault because Peter planted the suggestion. After seeing this false memory, the judge bangs his gavel and yells, "Guilty, guilty, guilty, guilty. Dr. Hartman, your medical license is hereby revoked." The judge has been manipulated by Peter into believing a false memory. Dr. Hartman loses his medical license based on Peter's deception. This ends the episode with Peter winning his lawsuit through manipulation rather than truth. How normal is this episode? This episode can be considered one of the more normal Family Guy episodes for several reasons. First, the episode follows standard Family Guy structure. There are two main plots running simultaneously: Peter's medical misunderstanding and Stewie's attachment to Lois. Both plots develop independently before resolving separately. This is typical Family Guy format where multiple storylines happen at once. Second, the episode uses recurring characters appropriately. Death appears in an earlier scene, Seamus makes his typical pirate-themed appearance, and the evil monkey shows up briefly. These are all established characters, appearing in ways consistent with previous episodes. Third, the cutaway gags are standard. The college exam cutaway, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Sulu parody, and the Kermit swamp scene are all typical Family Guy random references to pop culture. These cutaways happen frequently, but do not overwhelm the main story. Fourth, the character behaviors match their established personalities. Peter is extremely stupid and stubborn, refusing to accept simple explanations. Lois is the frustrated voice of reason. Brian has inappropriate attraction to Lois. Stewie acts sophisticated but infantile. All characters behave consistently with how they act in most episodes. Fifth, the themes are common. Family Guy topics, medical misunderstandings, legal conflicts, and family relationship problems are frequent subjects. The show often makes jokes about Peter being stupid, Stewie having complex emotions, and Brian's inappropriate crushes. However, some elements make this episode less normal than the most standard episodes. The extended breakdown scene with Peter destroying his appearance is darker than typical. The Michael Jackson trial reference is more controversial than average jokes. The ending where Peter wins through manipulation is somewhat cynical even for Family Guy. The sexual content is about average for the show. Peter touching Lois's breasts happens in many episodes. Brian flexing to impress Lois is typical unrequited love humor. The Cleveland steamer reference is crude, but Family Guy frequently includes vulgar sexual jokes. Overall, this episode ranks as more normal than episodes with science fiction plots, alternate reality stories, or complete departures from the show's format. It is more normal than episodes where characters die permanently, travel through time extensively, or completely change personality. The episode maintains the regular setting of Quahog, uses established characters, and resolves conflicts in ways that reset the status quo for future episodes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Brian Wallows and Peter's Swallows. This episode has two separate storylines that happen at the same time. The first story is about Peter growing a beard and birds nesting in it. The second story is about Brian being forced to take care of an elderly woman named Pearl as punishment for a crime. Both stories are simple and follow typical Family Guy patterns. Peter's beard story. The episode begins with an old man talking about a lamp. He says, "What, you don't think this is amazing? When I saw it in the 1904 World's Fair, I nearly crapped my pants." The old man is excited about seeing this lamp over 100 years ago at a famous event. The 1904 World's Fair was a real historical event in Street Louis. The old man uses crude language about almost defecating in his pants from excitement. There is loud music playing. Peter yells, "Get out of my beard, you squawking bastard." This reveals Peter has a beard, and something is living in it that makes noise. Peter is angry at whatever is in his beard. The word squawking suggests birds. Dr. Hartman appears and asks, "Hey, who wants to see a dead body?" This is Dr. Hartman being inappropriate and excited about showing people a corpse. This is typical behavior for Dr. Hartman in the show, who often acts unprofessional. Peter tells Lois, "Lois, I'm gonna grow a beard." Lois responds, "Oh, Peter, you know how I hate beards." Lois does not like beards and does not want Peter to grow one. Peter ignores her opinion and says, "Oh no, Lois, it's time I join the ranks of great men with beards." Peter believes having a beard will make him great. Peter gives an example. Why do you think Jesus Christ was so popular? Because of all his magic tricks. Peter suggests Jesus was popular because of his beard, not because of miracles. Peter calls Jesus' miracles magic tricks, which reduces religious events to entertainment. This is typical Peter logic, where he misunderstands why things are important. Later in the episode, Peter teaches someone about animals. Peter says, "Look, there's the cow. And what does a cow say?" The birds in Peter's beard make noise. Peter responds, "Yes, yes, that's right. A cow says, peep, 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 peep." Peter is teaching that cows make bird sounds because the birds in his beard are making noise. This is Peter being stupid and accepting wrong information as fact. A bird scientist examines Peter's beard. The scientist says, "This bird is a very rare species, the endangered white-rumped swallow. This is a real type of bird that is endangered and needs protection." The scientific name includes the word rump, which means butt. Chris laughs and says rump. Chris thinks the word rump is funny because it refers to butts. Peter scolds him, "This isn't funny, Chris." Then Peter himself laughs and says swallow. Peter thinks swallow is funny, probably because it can also refer to a sexual act. Peter criticizes Chris for laughing at a butt word, but then laughs at a sex word. This is hypocritical behavior. The birds living in Peter's beard are endangered white-rumped swallows. This means Peter cannot remove them because they are protected by law. Peter is stuck with birds living on his face. This is the main conflict of Peter's storyline. Anyone. He has animals living in his beard that he cannot get rid of. Brian's dating and community service story. Lois asks Brian, "Brian, what happened with your date?" Brian responds, "Same as always. She was an idiot." Brian went on a date that did not go well. Brian blames the woman, calling her stupid. This shows Brian has a pattern of unsuccessful dates where he thinks the women are the problem. Peter tries to give Brian advice. "Brian, I know this is a bad time for you, and if I have any advice to give you, it is this. Grow a beard." Peter's solution to Brian's dating problems is growing a beard. This is unhelpful advice that connects to Peter's own beard storyline. Peter thinks beards solve all problems. Brian must have gotten in trouble with the law because he is assigned to take care of an elderly woman. Brian visits a woman named Pearl in the hospital. Dr. Hartman tells Brian, "Right through here. Just tell the disorderly when you're ready to leave." Brian corrects him. "Don't you mean the orderly?" An orderly is a hospital worker who helps patients. Dr. Hartman responds, "No, the disorderly." Dr. Hartman laughs and explains that's a little medical joke. We also like Kevin Pollak. Dr. Hartman made a pun by saying disorderly instead of orderly. The word disorderly means chaotic or badly behaved. Dr. Hartman admits this is a medical joke that doctors find funny. He also mentions they like Kevin Pollak, who is a real comedian and actor. This is Dr. Hartman being silly and unprofessional. Pearl is an old woman who lives alone and never leaves her house. She is a shut-in, meaning she stays inside all the time. Brian must take care of Pearl as his punishment. This is community service, where criminals help people instead of going to jail. When Brian arrives, Pearl sprays him with something. Brian yells, "Ah, what the hell is this?" Pearl explains, "Delousing powder. Everyone on the outside is filthy. Delousing powder kills lice, which are small insects that live in hair." Pearl thinks everyone outside her house is dirty and has bugs. She sprays Brian without warning to kill any lice he might have. Brian complains, "Well, you could have given me some warning." Pearl responds, "Here's your warning. It's gonna burn like hell in 30 seconds. The delousing powder causes pain after 30 seconds. Pearl knew it would hurt but did not tell Brian in advance. This shows Pearl is mean and enjoys Brian's discomfort. Pearl gives Brian many rules. "I like my tea at 4, my dinner at 6, and I take my bath at 7 sharp so I can listen to Paul Harvey." Paul Harvey was a real radio broadcaster famous for his news commentary show. Pearl listens to Paul Harvey during her bath time at exactly 7 p.m. Pearl continues, "You will warm up my bath water with quick bursts from the faucet during commercials only. It's going to take you a while to get the rhythm." Paul Harvey moves seamlessly into commercials. Pearl wants Brian to add hot water to her bath during commercial breaks in the radio show. Paul Harvey transitions smoothly into commercials, making it hard to know when they start. This is a difficult and specific task Pearl demands. Pearl reminds Brian, "By the way, it's been 30 seconds. The delousing powder starts burning Brian's skin." Pearl timed this perfectly so she could finish explaining her rules right when the powder begins hurting. This shows Pearl is cruel and planned to cause Brian pain. Pearl is extremely difficult and demanding. She complains about all the food Brian makes. Pearl asks, "What is this? Spit soup?" Brian answers, "Tomato bisque." Tomato bisque is a type of tomato soup. Pearl insults it by comparing it to spit. Pearl asks again, "What is this? Snot soup?" Brian repeats, "Tomato bisque." Pearl compares the soup to mucus from noses. Pearl asks a third time, "What is this? Diarrhea soup?" Pearl now compares the soup to liquid feces. Pearl is being extremely rude by comparing good food to 3 different bodily fluids, not spit, snot, and diarrhea. Brian made the same soup each time, but Pearl keeps finding new disgusting things to compare it to. Brian eventually loses his temper. Brian yells, "That's it. I have had it with you, you old hag. You're just a miserable, dried-up shut-in trying to make everyone else feel as bad as you do. Why don't you do the world a big favor and drop dead?" Brian calls Pearl an old hag, which is a mean term for an old woman. Brian accuses Pearl of being miserable and wanting others to feel bad too. Brian tells Pearl to die and suggests the world would be better without her. This is extremely harsh language, where Brian wishes death on an elderly woman he is supposed to care for. There is also a scene at a restaurant. A waiter brings food and says, "Here you go, enjoy your food." Stewie responds, "Enjoy your studio apartment." A studio apartment is a small, cheap apartment with only 1 room. Stewie insults the waiter by suggesting he is poor and lives in bad housing. Stewie is being mean to someone just doing their job. This shows Stewie looks down on working-class people. Stewie's diaper discovery. Stewie has a separate small storyline about finding adult diapers. Stewie says, "Aha, so they do make bigger diapers. That deceitful woman told me I'd have to learn to use the toilet." Stewie discovered that adult diapers exist. Someone, probably Lois, told Stewie he needed to learn toilet training. Stewie calls this person deceitful because she lied about diapers not being available in bigger sizes. Stewie celebrates, "Well, fie on the toilet, it's made slaves of you all." The word fie is an old-fashioned exclamation of disgust. Stewie rejects the toilet and claims it has enslaved everyone. Stewie has strong opinions about toilets. Stewie continues his speech about the toilet. "I've seen it sitting in there, lazy, slothful, porcelain layabout, feeding on other people's doo-doos while contributing nothing of its own to society." Stewie describes the toilet as lazy and calling it a porcelain layabout. A layabout is someone who does nothing productive. Stewie says the toilet eats other people's feces, but contributes nothing back to society. Stewie treats the toilet like a lazy person. Stewie yells at the toilet, "You get a job." Stewie commands the toilet to find employment. This is absurd because toilets are objects that cannot work. Stewie's anger at the toilet is irrational but shows his sophisticated vocabulary and strange way of thinking. This is typical Stewie behavior, where he applies adult logic to child problems. Mayor West scene. There is a brief scene with Mayor West. Mayor West talks to his right hand and says, "You are a filthy whore." Mayor West is calling his own hand a prostitute. This suggests Mayor West has mental problems or engages in unusual behavior with his own hand. This is a quick joke about Mayor West being insane, which is his character trait in the show. Analysis of episode normality. This episode is one of the most normal Family Guy episodes for many reasons. First, the episode structure is completely standard. There are two main plots that run separately and both resolve by the end. Peter's beard problem and Brian's community service are independent stories that do not affect each other. This is typical Family Guy format, where multiple storylines happen in the same episode. Second, the setting never changes from normal Quahog life. Peter is at home dealing with his beard. Brian is in the town taking care of an elderly resident. Everything happens in the regular world, with no science fiction, fantasy, or time travel elements. The characters stay in their normal town doing normal things. Third, all the characters act exactly as expected. Peter does something stupid by growing a beard and not removing it when it causes problems. Lois is frustrated with Peter's decisions. Brian is pretentious and blames others for his problems. Stewie is sophisticated but childish. Chris laughs at butt jokes. Every character behaves consistently with their established personality. Fourth, the problems in the episode are realistic and ordinary. Growing a beard is something people actually do. Birds nesting in unusual places happens in real life. Court-ordered community service, where people take care of elderly shut-ins, is a real punishment. The episode's conflicts come from normal life situations, not from magic, aliens, or supernatural events. Fifth, the humor is standard Family Guy style. There are quick cutaway gags that do not impact the story. Characters make crude jokes about bodily functions and sex. The show makes fun of religion, poor people, and old people. Dr. Hartman acts inappropriately for a doctor. These are all typical Family Guy comedy elements that appear in most episodes. Sixth, the episode has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Peter decides to grow a beard, birds nest in it, and presumably the problem gets solved by the episode's end. Brian is assigned to Pearl, struggles with her difficult personality, loses his temper, and presumably learns a lesson or completes his service. Both plots have proper story structure with setup, conflict, and resolution. Seventh, there are no major permanent changes. Peter will shave his beard. Brian will finish his community service. By the next episode, everything will be back to normal. Family Guy typically resets to the status quo, and this episode follows that pattern. No characters die permanently, no one moves away, and no major life changes happen. Eighth, the episode uses only established characters. Peter, Lois, Brian, Stewie, Chris, Dr. Hartman, and Mayor West are all regular characters who appear frequently. Pearl is a new character, but she is just a one-episode guest. The episode does not introduce major new cast members or change the show's character dynamics. Ninth, the cultural references are simple and accessible. The 1904 World's Fair is basic history. Paul Harvey was a famous broadcaster that many people know. Kevin Pollak is a well-known comedian. Jesus is a universally recognized figure. These references do not require deep knowledge of obscure topics. The episode does not make complicated jokes that need extensive explanation. 10th, the episode's tone is consistent throughout. It maintains the same level of crude humor, sarcastic dialogue, and cartoon violence from start to finish. There are no dramatic tonal shifts or serious moments that interrupt the comedy. The episode is steadily funny without trying to be emotional or meaningful. 11th, the moral lessons are simple or non-existent. Peter might learn not to grow beards. Brian might learn patience with difficult people. But the show does not push heavy messages or try to teach important life lessons. Family Guy typically avoids being preachy, and this episode follows that approach. 12th, the animation and art style are standard. There are no special visual effects, unusual animation techniques, or artistic experiments. The episode looks like every other Family Guy episode with the same character designs, colors, and backgrounds. Visual consistency makes the episode feel normal and familiar. Compared to more unusual Family Guy episodes, this episode is extremely normal. Some episodes have the characters travel to alternate dimensions. Some episodes are entirely musical. Some episodes take place in the past or future. Some episodes are parodies of other movies or shows. This episode has none of those unusual elements. It is just a regular day in Quahog with regular problems. The episode does not push boundaries as much as some Family Guy episodes. Some episodes have extremely controversial content that causes public complaints. This episode's humor is crude but not shocking by Family Guy standards. The jokes about bodily fluids, sex references, and insults are all normal for the show. Nothing in this episode would cause unusual controversy or censorship issues. The Peter Beard story is silly but believable within Family Guy's world. Birds nesting in someone's beard is absurd but not impossible. It is the kind of everyday problem that gets exaggerated for comedy. This is much more normal than episodes where Peter fights a giant chicken, becomes a celebrity, or gets superhuman abilities. The Brian and Pearl story is even more realistic. Many people do community service, taking care of elderly people. Many elderly shut-ins are difficult and mean because of loneliness and fear. Brian losing his temper with a demanding person is completely realistic human behavior. This story could almost happen in real life, with minimal exaggeration. The Stewie diaper plot is minor and does not distract from the main stories. It is just a small joke about Stewie refusing toilet training. This is normal because most Family Guy episodes have small side plots that give other characters something to do. The diaper joke does not take over the episode or create major complications. Overall, this episode ranks as one of the most normal Family Guy episodes because it follows standard structure, stays in the regular setting, uses typical humor, features established characters behaving normally, and resolves conflicts in predictable ways. It is exactly what someone would expect from a typical Family Guy episode with no surprises or unusual elements. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown, including moving on to Moving Out, Brian's song, one of the most normal episodes. This episode focuses on Brian's relationship with his girlfriend Jillian. The main story is about Brian being pressured to move in with Jillian even though he does not want a serious relationship. This is a typical romantic comedy plot that many sitcoms use. The episode also has smaller stories about Stewie delivering newspapers and Meg trying to find work. Brian and Jillian's relationship. The episode begins with Jillian telling Brian a fact. Jillian says, "Brian, did you know that Daryl Hannah has one wooden finger?" Daryl Hannah is a real actress who was in movies like Splash and Kill Bill. Jillian believes Daryl Hannah has a wooden finger, which is not true. Brian asks, "Really? Where'd you hear that?" Jillian answers, "In Payopley magazine." Jillian mispronounces People magazine by breaking it into 2 syllables. This opening shows Jillian's character trait. She is very stupid and believes false information. Jillian often misunderstands simple things and accepts obviously wrong facts as truth. This is her main personality throughout the series. She is beautiful, but extremely dumb. Lois sees Brian at home and says, "Oh, hi Brian, I thought you were spending the day with Jillian." Brian explains, "I was, but Peter took her off my hands." Perfect timing. I've been feeling a little smothered lately. Plus, it's given me a chance to work on my novel. Brian is relieved to have time away from Jillian. Brian says he feels smothered, which means Jillian wants too much attention, and Brian feels trapped. Brian uses this free time to write his book. Brian announces, "And I finally have a title." Lois asks what the title is. Brian proudly says, "Faster than the speed of love." Lois immediately laughs and responds, That is the worst title I've ever heard." Lois thinks the title is terrible. Brian defends his book by explaining the plot. Brian describes his novel, "No, I Dot It." It's the story of a boy who has to rescue his father, who's a pilot that's been taken captive by a militant Islamic country. Lois recognizes this plot immediately. She laughs and says, "That's the movie Iron Eagle." Iron Eagle is a real 1986 movie with this exact plot. Brian's novel is accidentally the same story as an existing film. Brian is shocked and asks, "What? Is that a recent film?" Brian does not know about Iron Eagle. Lois keeps laughing and tells him they made 3 sequels. Iron Eagle was popular enough to get 3 sequel movies. This means Brian's supposedly original novel is actually copying a well-known film series. Brian tries to make his story different. He says, "Yeah, well, I dot in mine, the boy's gotta gather all these old World War II pilots to help him rescue his father." Brian thinks adding World War II pilots makes his version unique. Lois laughs even harder and responds, "That's one of the sequels. One of the Iron Eagle sequel movies already used this plot element." Brian cannot create anything original because all his ideas already exist in the Iron Eagle films. Brian makes one more attempt. Well, in mine, one of the World War II guys is Japanese, but they accept him anyway. Brian adds a Japanese character who is accepted despite World War II history between Japan and America. Lois is now laughing so hard she says from off camera, "I'm gonna pee my pants." Lois finds Brian's failed attempts at originality hilarious. She is laughing so much she might urinate from the laughter. This scene establishes that Brian thinks he is intelligent and artistic, but actually has no original ideas. Brian's pretentiousness is one of his main character flaws. He believes he is better than others, but constantly fails at intellectual pursuits. Lois pressures Brian to commit. Later, Brian talks to Lois about his relationship problems. Brian tells Lois, "Don't you understand? I don't want a committed relationship with Jillian." Brian clearly states he does not want a serious relationship. Lois responds, "Well, it sounds like she does, and if you're never gonna get serious, then you're not being fair to her." Lois points out that Jillian wants commitment, while Brian does not. This mismatch in relationship goals is unfair to Jillian. Lois asks Brian a harsh question. "I mean, what are you, Brian? One of those creepy guys who just uses a woman for sex?" While Lois is talking, something unusual happens on screen. An advertisement for The Simpsons, Sundays on Fox, appears on the screen with a small Marge Simpson waving to the camera. This is a promotional crossover between Family Guy and The Simpsons, which are both Fox animated shows. Then Quagmire runs onto the screen, knocks Marge over, and tries to have sex with her. Marge resists and kicks Quagmire off her. She runs away while Quagmire chases her with his pants down. This is a joke about Quagmire being a sex predator who attacks anyone, even cartoon characters from other shows. The joke plays during Lois's dialogue about men who use women for sex, making Quagmire a visual example. Lois continues her speech because Jillian deserves better. She has feelings, you know? And she's devoted a lot of time and energy to this relationship with some expectation that it could grow into something much more significant, and if you're just stringing her along, well, then, I've got to say I've lost a lot of respect for you, Brian. Lois explains that Jillian has invested time and emotion into the relationship, expecting it to become serious. If Brian is stringing her along, meaning keeping her in the relationship without real commitment, then Lois will lose respect for Brian. Brian is hurt by this accusation. He asks, "You don't really think I'm like that, do you?" Brian cares what Lois thinks of him. Lois challenges him, "Prove me wrong." Lois wants Brian to demonstrate he is not using Jillian. Brian accepts the challenge. "All right, I will, Lois. I will ask her to move in with me, and you'll see, I've got what it takes." Brian decides to ask Jillian to move in together. Brian is doing this to prove himself to Lois, not because he actually wants to live with Jillian. This is a bad reason to make a major relationship decision. Brian is motivated by pride and wanting Lois's approval rather than genuine feelings for Jillian. Stewie's newspaper route. There is a side story about Stewie taking over Chris's newspaper delivery job. Stewie is shown delivering papers using his big wheel tricycle. Herbert, an elderly neighbor who is attracted to young boys, sees Stewie. Herbert says, "Oh, Oshkosh bagosh, it's a brand new paperboy. That's a mighty full sack you're carrying." Oshkosh bagosh is a real children's clothing brand. Herbert comments on Stewie's full sack, which refers to the bag of newspapers but is said in a creepy sexual way. Stewie immediately responds, "Piss off, you perverted old freak." Stewie recognizes Herbert is a predator and tells him to go away using the British term, piss off. Stewie rides away quickly. Herbert responds, "Oh ho, we got a fighter." Herbert is excited that Stewie resists him. Herbert likes when children fight back. This is extremely dark humor about a pedophile character. This brief scene serves two purposes. First, it shows Stewie has a job delivering newspapers, which becomes relevant later. Second, it provides a typical Herbert joke. Herbert appears in many episodes making inappropriate comments about young boys. This is Family Guy's recurring disturbing character. Living together problems. Brian and Jillian move in together. Stewie also moves in with them. Brian explains to Jillian, "Listen, I hope you don't mind Stewie staying with us for a little while. He just gets really lonely without me at home." Brian brings Stewie to the apartment because Stewie gets lonely. This immediately creates problems because Stewie will interfere with Brian's relationship. Jillian responds positively, "You're so fatherly. That really turns me on." Jillian finds Brian's caretaking of Stewie attractive. She sees Brian as a father figure, which excites her sexually. Brian and Jillian start kissing and making out. While they are kissing, Stewie interrupts by whining off-screen, "Brian, there's no more graham crackers." Graham crackers are sweet crackers, often given to children. Stewie wants a snack. Brian answers without stopping, "They're in the cabinet." Brian tries to continue kissing Jillian while helping Stewie. Stewie complains, "I don't see them." Brian gives more specific directions. "They're right in front of you. Which cabinet are you looking in?" Brian is getting frustrated but still trying to help remotely. Stewie demands, "Can't you just come in here?" Stewie wants Brian to come look for him. Brian refuses, "No, I'm busy." Brian continues with Jillian. There is a loud crash and glass breaking sound. Stewie starts panicking. "Oh no, Brian, oh no, oh no, oh Brian, we need paper towels. Oh, it's going under the fridge. Oh." Stewie has broken something and spilled liquid. The liquid is flowing under the refrigerator. Stewie is yelling dramatically about this minor problem. Brian suggests from the bedroom, just use a dish towel. A dish towel can clean up spills, just like paper towels. Stewie screams, "There aren't any, Brian. You need to come in here." "Oh, we are gonna have ants." Stewie claims there are no dish towels and warns they will get ants if the spill is not cleaned immediately. Stewie is being extremely dramatic and demanding about a simple spill. This scene shows how Stewie ruins Brian's romantic time with Jillian. Stewie acts like a needy child who constantly interrupts. This is typical sitcom comedy where a third person prevents a couple from being intimate. Later, Brian and Jillian are in bed together, making out. Brian turns on the light and discovers Stewie has entered their bedroom. Stewie asks, "Brian, are you guys up?" This is obvious because they just turned the light on. Brian yells, "Stewie, what the hell are you doing? Go back to bed." Brian is angry that Stewie invaded their bedroom. Stewie explains, "But I'm not tired, and I'm lonely." Stewie cannot sleep and wants company. Jillian sympathetically says, "Oh, come get in bed with us." Jillian invites Stewie to sleep in their bed. This is inappropriate because Brian and Jillian want privacy for intimacy. Stewie accepts. "Oh, all right, dear Penthouse Forum." Penthouse Forum is a section in Penthouse magazine where people write letters about sexual experiences. Stewie references this adult content, suggesting the three of them in bed together is sexual. This is a dark joke about a baby making sexual references. The rent revelation. Later in the episode, there is an important reveal. Stewie says, "That's right, I'm paying Mr. Lickety-Self's half of the rent." Stewie calls Brian Mr. Lickety-Self as an insult, referring to dogs licking themselves. Stewie reveals he has been paying Brian's portion of the rent money. Jillian asks, "Is that true?" She is surprised by this information. Brian admits, "All right, yes, fine, it's true." Brian confirms that Stewie pays his rent. Jillian asks, "Why didn't you say anything?" Jillian wants to know why Brian hid this fact. Brian explains honestly, "Because you wanted me to move in so badly, and God knows I didn't want to." Brian accidentally reveals the truth. He did not want to move in with Jillian. Jillian catches this. "Wait, you didn't want to move in with me?" Jillian is hurt that Brian never wanted to live together. Brian admits, "Well, honestly, no." Brian confirms he did not want this relationship step. Jillian is devastated. "Oh my God, I've never felt so stupid." Jillian feels foolish for not realizing Brian's true feelings. Both Brian and Stewie respond together in surprise. "Really?" They are shocked because Jillian says stupid things constantly. Jillian always seems unintelligent, so claiming she has never felt more stupid is surprising. The joke is that Brian and Stewie are amazed Jillian has any self-awareness about being dumb. Jillian makes her decision. "Well, I don't want to be your guilty burden, Brian. We're through." Jillian breaks up with Brian. She grabs her clothes and leaves. Brian tries to stop her. "Jillian, wait, damn it." But Jillian is gone. Stewie apologizes. "I'm sorry, Brian. You'll feel better in the morning." Stewie accidentally caused the breakup by revealing the rent situation. Stewie covers himself with blankets. Brian turns the light out to sleep, but Stewie keeps talking. "Hey, you know what you should do? You should have sex with somebody else, just to get back at her for walking out on you. Just have sex with somebody. Anybody. Just don't even think about it. The next person you see, the very next person you see." Stewie gives terrible revenge advice. Stewie suggests Brian should have sex with anyone immediately, just for revenge against Jillian. This is manipulative advice that would make Brian feel worse. Meg's job search. There is a side plot about Meg looking for employment. Lois asks, "So Meg, any luck finding another job?" Meg responds, "No, hardly anybody's hiring right now. The only job I could find was for a phone sex line, and I sucked at it." Meg tried working for a phone sex company where employees talk to callers in sexual ways. Meg was very bad at this job. The phrase "sucked at it" is ironic because sucking can also be sexual. There is a cutaway showing Meg's attempt at phone sex work. Meg is on the couch, talking on the phone. The caller asks what Meg is wearing. Meg answers awkwardly, "What am I wearing?" A hat and glasses?" Meg describes completely unsexy clothing. She lists a hat and glasses, which are not attractive or provocative items. The caller asks another question, and Meg responds, "What kind of underwear?" I don't know. Big underwear, I guess." Meg describes wearing big underwear, which suggests granny panties or other unattractive undergarments. Phone sex requires describing sexy underwear, but Meg gives the least appealing answer possible. Meg continues failing. "I'm sorry, what? Oh, what would I do to you?" "Well, I guess maybe we could get pizza, and we could watch House?" When asked what sexual acts she would perform, Meg suggests ordering pizza and watching House, which is a medical drama TV show. These are normal date activities, not sexual fantasies. Meg completely misunderstands phone sex work. The scene cuts to Peter in the bedroom on the phone. Peter is revealed to be Meg's caller. Peter says, "All right, I am totally flaccid, but thank you anyway, ma'am. I appreciate your time." Peter states he is totally flaccid, meaning his penis is completely unaroused. Meg's terrible phone sex skills failed to excite even her own father. Peter is polite despite the failure, thanking Meg for trying. The dark joke is that Peter called a phone sex line and accidentally got his daughter, but neither of them realized they were talking to each other. Brian returns home. After breaking up with Jillian, Brian moves back to the Griffin house. Lois tries to comfort Brian. "Hey, and look on the bright side. Maybe you've got another chapter for your..." Lois starts laughing before finishing her sentence. She was going to say book, but finds it too funny. The entire family joins in, laughing at Brian's failed novel. Brian is annoyed. "Oh yeah, pile it on, pile it on." Brian tells them to continue mocking him sarcastically. The family enjoys making fun of Brian's literary failures. Chris says, "Welcome home, asshole." Chris insults Brian while welcoming him back. This shows the family's dynamic, where they are mean to each other but still family. There is a final scene with Stewie asking Meg, "Lend me $0.25 so I can ride the toy airplane outside and make the immigrant kids jealous." Many stores have coin-operated rides shaped like airplanes or horses. Stewie wants a quarter to ride one. Stewie's goal is making immigrant children feel jealous because they cannot afford the ride. This shows Stewie being cruel and classist toward poor children. Why this is a normal episode. This episode is one of the most normal Family Guy episodes for many important reasons. First, the episode uses a classic sitcom plot. Many TV shows have done stories about couples moving in together too fast and then breaking up. This is a standard romantic comedy storyline that appears in countless sitcoms. The episode follows predictable beats: pressure to commit, moving in, problems arise, truth revealed, breakup. This structure is familiar and comfortable. Second, all the characters behave exactly as expected. Brian is pretentious and fails at intellectual pursuits. Jillian is beautiful but extremely stupid. Lois is judgmental and pushy. Stewie is sophisticated but interfering. Peter is crude and inappropriate. Meg is pathetic and unsuccessful. Chris is dim-witted. Every character acts consistent with their established personality. There are no surprises or character development. Third, the episode stays in the normal Family Guy world. Everything happens in Quahog at regular locations like the Griffin house and Brian's apartment. There are no science fiction elements, no time travel, no alternate realities, no supernatural events. The episode is grounded in normal life situations. Fourth, the humor is typical Family Guy style. There are cutaway gags like Meg's phone sex failure. There are pop culture references like Iron Eagle and The Simpsons. There are crude sexual jokes like Quagmire chasing Marge. There is dark humor about pedophilia with Herbert. There are mean jokes about Meg being pathetic. All of these comedy elements appear regularly in Family Guy. Fifth, The relationship problems are realistic and common. Many people date someone they like physically, but do not want to commit to seriously. Many people move in with partners for wrong reasons like peer pressure. Many relationships end when one person realizes the other was never truly committed. These are real relationship issues that happen to actual people. Sixth, the episode resets to the status quo. By the end, Brian is back living with the Griffins. Jillian is gone. Everything returns to normal. This is typical Family Guy structure where major changes do not stick. The show always returns to its basic setup. Seventh, no permanent consequences happen. Brian and Jillian break up, but they will probably get back together in future episodes. Stewie moves back home. Nobody dies, nobody moves away forever, nobody has major life changes. The episode ends with everything basically the same as it started. Eighth, the episode length and pacing are standard. There is one main plot about Brian and Jillian, with smaller side plots about Stewie's newspaper route and Meg's job search. This is normal Family Guy structure with one big story and a few minor stories. Ninth, the episode does not try to teach lessons. Brian does not learn to be honest about his feelings. Jillian does not learn to demand respect. Lois does not learn to stop interfering. Nobody grows or changes. Family Guy rarely has meaningful character development, and this episode follows that pattern. 10th, the episode's tone is consistently comedic. There are no dramatic moments or emotional scenes. Even the breakup is played for laughs rather than sadness. The episode maintains the same level of crude humor throughout, without trying to be touching or meaningful. Compared to unusual Family Guy episodes, this is extremely normal. Some episodes are all musical numbers, some parody Star Wars, some take place in alternate dimensions, some feature characters dying and coming back. This episode has none of those elements. It is just a regular relationship comedy with typical Family Guy jokes. The episode does not push boundaries more than usual. The pedophile jokes with Herbert are standard for the character. The sexual content is crude, but not shocking by Family Guy standards. There's nothing in this episode that would cause major controversy or complaints. It is Family Guy's normal level of inappropriate humor. Overall, this episode ranks as one of the most normal because it uses predictable sitcom plots, maintains consistent characterization, stays in the regular setting, includes typical humor, and resets everything by the end. It is exactly what viewers expect from a standard Family Guy episode. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Brian in Love, originally aired on the 7th of March 2000 during Family Guy's second season. The episode was written by Gary Janetti and directed by Michael Dante DiMartino. This episode is one of the most normal Family Guy episodes because it uses a standard sitcom plot about unrequited love and follows typical Family Guy structure with cutaway gags, consistent characters, and predictable resolution. The main plot, unrequited love. The episode focuses on Brian having romantic feelings he cannot act on. Unrequited love is one of the most common sitcom plots in television history. Many shows have episodes where one character loves another who does not love them back. This is a classic storytelling formula that Family Guy uses in a straightforward way. The episode begins with a mystery in the Griffin household. Someone has been urinating all over the house. Meg discovers wet spots on the rug and calls to her mother, "Ew, Mom, Stewie peed on the rug again." The family assumes Stewie is responsible because he is a 1-year-old baby who wears diapers. Lois is frustrated and says, "Oh, this has got to stop." However, the real culprit is Brian Griffin. Brian has been secretly urinating around the house due to anxiety. When confronted, Brian pretends to be shocked and says no while acting innocent. He successfully frames Stewie for his own accidents. This is typical Brian behavior. He is cowardly and willing to blame others to avoid consequences. Stewie plays along with the deception. He claims his imaginary friend, Puddles, is responsible. Stewie tells Lois, "Lois, it looks like Puddles has done it again. Goodness, he has wet everything. Ha ha ha." Stewie having an imaginary friend to blame is typical child behavior. This gives Stewie an excuse, while also keeping Brian's secret. Stewie and Brian having secret alliances is common in Family Guy episodes. At one point, Meg picks up Stewie's teddy bear Rupert, which has been lying in urine. She comments, "God, it smells gross." Brian makes a sarcastic remark to Meg, "Well, Princess, I don't see anybody dabbing yours behind their ears." This is Brian being mean to Meg, which is typical behavior. The family regularly insults Meg in most episodes. Peter becomes frustrated with the urine problem. He considers covering furniture with plastic and confronts Brian. So what the hell, Brian? You cured yet? 'Cause you know, I don't want to live in a house with plastic on the furniture like some Italian family. This references a stereotype about Italian-American households. Peter making ethnic stereotype jokes is normal Peter behavior throughout the series. Brian's therapy. Brian admits he has been seeing a therapist. He tells Peter, "My therapist thinks he has figured out what my problem is." Peter makes a joke calling the therapist Sigmund Freud instead of Sigmund Freud. Brian explains, "He thinks I'm in love." Peter responds with complete absurdity, "Oh my God, you can talk." Brian stares at Peter during a long pause, confused by this response, since Peter has talked to Brian for years. Brian simply says, "Never mind." This is typical Peter behavior. Peter is extremely stupid and forgets basic facts constantly. Peter acting like he forgot Brian can talk is standard Family Guy humor, where Peter is impossibly dumb. This type of joke appears in many episodes where Peter forgets obvious things. The therapy sessions show Brian talking to Dr. Kaplan. During one session, Dr. Kaplan asks, "I'd like to pat you, Brian. Would that be okay?" Brian agrees, and the doctor pats him, saying, "You're a good dog, Brian. A very good dog." Brian responds, "Keep it above the waist, doc." This establishes boundaries about being touched. Brian wanting to be treated with dignity is consistent with his character, who sees himself as sophisticated. The conversation about feelings. Brian has a conversation with Lois where he hints at his feelings. Brian says, "Lois, did your heart ever want to ask something, but your head was too afraid of what the answer might be?" This vague question suggests Brian wants to confess feelings. Lois responds thoughtfully, Oh, God. Sometimes it's best not to ask those questions. Sometimes we should cherish what we already have, like a very special friendship, let's say like the one you and I share that someone like me wouldn't change for anything in the world. This is Lois being mature and redirecting Brian gently. Lois often acts as the voice of reason in the family. Brian agrees, "Someone like me wouldn't change it for anything in the world either." This exchange shows Lois handling an awkward situation with grace. Brian eventually confesses his feelings directly. Later, Brian confirms with Lois, "Okay, just to be clear, we were talking about me being in love with you and you rejecting me, right?" Lois confirms, "Yes." Brian pushes further, asking, "Say we were both drunk and we knew we wouldn't remember." Lois begins to consider, "Well, I'd have to be really, before firmly concluding, no." She rejects any possibility completely. Peter tries to comfort Brian after the rejection. Peter says, "So she dumped you, huh? Ah, the hell with her. She'll probably end up with some idiot. Serves her right." He continues, damn, mulligan, damn. Peter's consolation is awkward and accidentally insulting since Peter is married to Lois, making him the idiot he mentions. This shows Peter's typical stupidity, where he does not think through what he says. The potty training subplot. A secondary story involves Lois deciding to potty train Stewie. She tells Peter, maybe it's time for Stewie to start potty training. Peter questions this. Isn't he a little young for that? You know what happened to the Lindbergh baby. This leads to a cutaway gag about Charles Lindbergh. The cutaway shows Charles Lindbergh trying to potty train his baby. Mrs. Lindbergh protests, "Charles? He's only 6 months old." Charles responds arrogantly, "Honey, would you relax? God, I flew across the Atlantic by myself. I'm a national treasure, for God's sake. I think I know how to." The baby flushes himself down the toilet and disappears. Charles quickly covers up the accident by claiming kidnapping. He tells his wife, oh God. All right, he was kidnapped. You call the police. I'll write the ransom note." Mrs. Lindbergh worries, "What about Amelia?" The scene shows Amelia Earhart looking shocked after witnessing everything. Charles says ominously, "You leave her to me." This dark joke suggests Lindbergh made Amelia Earhart disappear to silence a witness. The joke connects two famous mysteries, the Lindbergh kidnapping and Amelia Earhart's disappearance. Cutaway gags like this are standard Family Guy format. The show regularly includes random historical or pop culture references that have nothing to do with the main plot. These cutaways provide quick jokes before returning to the story. This Lindbergh cutaway is typical dark humor that Family Guy uses frequently. Peter goes to a bookstore for potty training books. He tells the clerk, "Yeah, I'm looking for toilet training books." The clerk recommends, "Everybody Poops" is still the standard, of course. We've also got the less popular "Nobody Poops But You." "Everybody Poops" is a real children's book. Peter responds, "Huh, well, see, we're Catholic, so." The clerk immediately understands and suggests, "Then you're a naughty child and that's concentrated evil coming out the back of you." Peter enthusiastically agrees. Perfect. This joke makes fun of Catholic guilt and religious attitudes about bodily functions being shameful. Family Guy regularly mocks religion, especially Catholicism. This type of religious joke appears in many episodes. Stewie's scenes. The episode includes several typical Stewie moments. At one meal, Stewie looks at his food and asks, "What the hell is this?" Lois explains, "Sweetie, that's tuna salad." Stewie responds sarcastically, "Oh, is that what it is? Really? Because I could have sworn it was mayonnaise and cat food." This shows Stewie's sophisticated personality and complaints about food quality. Stewie insulting Lois's cooking is standard behavior. In another scene, Stewie attacks Lois physically. He orders, "Bend down, mother." When Lois bends down, Stewie slaps her and shouts, "How dare you soil my good name by spreading your slanderous filth." This violent outburst demonstrates Stewie's antagonism toward his mother. Stewie wanting to kill Lois is his main character trait in early seasons. This violence is normal Stewie behavior. At one point, Lois asks Stewie, "Stewie, did you unhook mommy's bra?" This suggests Stewie has been tampering with Lois's clothing. Stewie, doing inappropriate things, is typical for his character. Family dinner scene. During family dinner, Meg tries to tell a story. She says, "Then, Brittany and Amber were like, 'Let's go to the mall.' And I was like, 'Okay, I'll go to the mall.' But then Amber wasn't gonna go. So I went to the mall, and you're not gonna believe it, they both showed up." Peter interrupts her bluntly. "Hold on, Meg. Meg, I'm sorry. That is a really boring story." This shows the family's typical treatment of Meg. The family dismisses everything Meg says and finds her boring. Meg telling pointless stories and getting insulted is normal Family Guy humor. The show makes fun of Meg constantly. Other brief scenes. Brian meets author Dean Koontz. Brian exclaims, "Oh my God, are you Stephen King?" Dean Koontz corrects him, "No, I'm Dean Koontz." Brian responds disappointedly, "Oh." This brief joke mocks Dean Koontz for being less famous than Stephen King despite being a successful horror author. Quick celebrity jokes like this are common in Family Guy. There is a scene where Bob Barker appears on television saying, "This is Bob Barker reminding you to help control the pet population. Have your pets spayed or neutered." Brian watches this and responds bitterly, "Oh, just die, already." Brian is annoyed at being reminded he is a pet who could be neutered. This is a simple joke about Brian's identity issues. The Jetsons parody ending. The episode ends with a parody of The Jetsons animated series. The parody recreates the famous ending where George Jetson gets stuck on the treadmill yelling, "Help, Jane, stop this crazy thing, stop, help." However, this version shows George coming home severely beaten up. Jane says, "Oh my God, George." George responds angrily, "Did you not hear me out there?" Their son Elroy tries to speak, but George cuts him off. "Go to your room, Elroy." When Elroy asks what happened, George shouts, "Go to your room." George tells Jane, "For 45 minutes, I was out there screaming. I know that, 'cause my damn watch is broken." Jane apologizes, but George continues ranting. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jane is sorry. I could have been killed." This parody transforms the cheerful Jetsons into an angry, dysfunctional family. Family Guy frequently parodies classic TV shows by making them dark or inappropriate. This type of parody appears in many episodes. Why this is a normal episode? This episode is one of the most normal Family Guy episodes for many important reasons. First, the main plot uses a standard sitcom storyline. Unrequited love is one of the most common plots in television history. Many sitcoms have episodes where one character loves another who cannot love them back. The episode follows predictable beats. Character has feelings, hints at feelings, confesses feelings, gets rejected, moves on. This structure is familiar from countless other TV shows. Second, every character behaves exactly as expected. Peter is stupid and says inappropriate things. Lois is mature and reasonable. Brian is pretentious and cowardly. Stewie is violent and sophisticated. Meg gets insulted. Chris barely appears. All characters act consistently with their established personalities. There are no surprises or unusual behaviors. Third, the episode uses typical Family Guy format. There are cutaway gags like the Lindbergh baby joke and the Jetsons parody. These random references provide quick humor before returning to the main story. Cutaway gags appear in almost every Family Guy episode. This episode's cutaways are standard examples. Fourth, the humor style is typical Family Guy comedy. There are ethnic stereotype jokes, religious jokes, celebrity mocking, dark historical humor, and crude bodily function jokes. All of these comedy types appear regularly throughout the series. Nothing in this episode pushes boundaries more than normal Family Guy content. Fifth, the episode stays in the regular Family Guy world. Everything happens in Quahog at normal locations like the Griffin House, the bookstore, and the therapist's office. There are no science fiction elements, no time travel, no alternate realities, no supernatural events. The episode is grounded in normal sitcom life. Sixth, the problems are realistic within the show's universe. Having feelings for someone unavailable is a real human problem. Seeing a therapist for anxiety is realistic. Potty training a toddler is normal parenting. The episode deals with everyday life situations that get exaggerated for comedy. Seventh, the episode has clear structure. There is one main plot about Brian's feelings and one subplot about potty training, Stewie. This is standard Family Guy structure, with one big story and one smaller story. The plots develop logically and resolve by the end. Eighth, the episode resets to status quo. By the end, Brian is rejected and moves on. Everything returns to normal. Brian will continue living with the Griffins as their pet. Lois remains happily married to Peter. Nothing changes permanently. Family Guy always resets to its basic setup, and this episode follows that pattern. Ninth, no major consequences happen. Brian's confession does not destroy his friendship with Lois or his place in the family. Peter's stupidity does not cause lasting problems. Stewie's potty training does not complete. The episode ends with everything basically the same as it started. This is typical for Family Guy, where big events do not create permanent changes. 10th, the episode's tone is consistently comedic. Even the emotional moments are played for laughs. Brian's rejection is not treated as deeply sad or tragic. The therapy scenes include jokes. The potty training subplot provides comic relief. The episode maintains steady humor without trying to be dramatic or meaningful. 11th, the episode does not try to teach lessons. Brian does not learn about accepting rejection gracefully. Lois does not learn anything new. Peter remains stupid. Nobody grows or changes. Family Guy rarely has character development, and this episode follows that pattern. The characters are exactly the same people at the end as at the beginning. 12th, the relationships between characters stay normal. Brian and Lois remain friends. Peter and Lois remain married. Stewie still wants to kill Lois. Brian still lives with the family. All the usual dynamics continue unchanged. The episode does not disrupt established relationships. Compared to unusual Family Guy episodes, this is extremely normal. Some episodes are entirely musical. Some parody Star Wars or other movies. Some take place in alternate dimensions. Some feature major character deaths. This episode has none of those unusual elements. It is just a regular day in Quahog with regular problems. The episode follows sitcom conventions perfectly. The main character has a problem, tries to solve it, faces rejection, and returns to normal. This 3-act structure appears in thousands of sitcom episodes. Family Guy uses this standard formula without adding unusual twists. The animation style is standard. There are no special visual effects or artistic experiments. The episode looks like every other Family Guy episode with the same character designs and backgrounds. Visual consistency makes the episode feel familiar. The cultural references are accessible. The Lindbergh Baby, Sigmund Freud, Bob Barker, The Jetsons, and Everybody Poops are all well-known references that most viewers recognize. The episode does not make obscure jokes requiring deep knowledge. Overall, this episode ranks as one of the most normal Family Guy episodes because it uses predictable sitcom plots, maintains consistent characterization, stays in the regular setting, includes typical cutaway gags, uses standard humor, and resets everything by the end. It is exactly what viewers expect from a typical Family Guy episode with no surprises or unusual elements. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.